Chapter 585. Hua Jin smiled in satisfaction. If Feng Yi said that there was a way, then there was definitely a way. Based on her understanding of Feng Yi, as long as he wanted to do something, there was nothing he couldn't do. This was because this man was unscrupulous in everything he did, so he rarely failed. Feng Yi, the third prince of the Wind Country, was the strongest among all the princes, but also the most abnormal. His father was the current Wind Emperor, and his mother was the Wind Empress. The Wind Empress's family was very powerful, and it was impossible for a certain someone to defeat all the noble ladies in the Wind Country to ascend to the throne. The Wind Emperor had two princes. The first and third princes were born of the Wind Emperor, while the other 5 princes were born of the 4 wives of the Wind Emperor. The eldest prince and the third prince, Feng Yi, were the princes most likely to ascend the throne in the future. Hua Jin knew that Feng Yi would not be willing to let his brother become the Wind Emperor. They were both the legitimate sons of the Wind Emperor. If he lost to his brother just because of seniority, Feng Yi would not be willing to accept it. It was because of this that he was anxious to develop his underground power, and even made this deal with her to obtain that thing. After the 3 fellows colluding with each other discussed the matter of moving little Baozi, they left separately. Little Yi and little Baozi were locked in a room alone. He sat obediently on the small bed, not crying or making a fuss. When a maid came to feed him, he would obediently open his mouth, but he didn't call out to anyone and didn't like to talk. After everyone left, little Baozi rubbed his chin like a little adult. Are these bad people trying to use me to lure mommy out? They are indeed bad people, even daring to kidnap little Yi. How should I teach them a lesson? Little Baozi thought bitterly, but he couldn't think of a satisfactory solution. Xiao Bai. Little Yi called out Xiao Bai's name softly. At this time, a white creature appeared in the originally empty room. Who else could it be but Xiao Bai? Speaking of which, the situation yesterday was like this. When Hua Jin's maid wanted to take little Baozi away, Xiao Bai immediately wanted to attack. Although Xiao Bai's fighting power wasn't great, very few people could break through the barrier set up by the Holy Mother Beast. As long as Little Bun and Little White were together, they would never be kidnapped. However, Little Bun was curious about what this strange person wanted to do. He transmitted his voice to Little White, telling him not to make a move. Thus, our Little Bun Feng Yi was successfully kidnapped. The person who kidnapped him didn't know that the kidnapping went so smoothly because of Little Bun's cooperation. They thought that it was because they were lucky, but that was also true. After all, who would think that a Little Bun that was not even 2 years old already had such ideas? Little Master, have you finally thought it through and decided to go back with Little White? Little White transmitted its voice to Little Bun expectantly. Of course not, I want to stay here and see what they want to do. Little Bun shook his head seriously and said in his soft and cute voice. These bad guys wanted to do bad things to his mother. As a righteous Bun, he had to protect his mother and get rid of the bad guys. But Little Master, if you don't go back now, Master will be worried. Little White knew that the person Little Bun liked the most was Feng Wu. In order to prevent this playful Little Bun from seeking death outside, Little White could only bring up Feng Wu. Don't be scared, don't be scared. When I catch these bad guys, Mommy will praise me. Little Bun said in his childish voice. Alright, he had no choice. He couldn't stop his Little Master from seeking death. Master, come back quickly. Little White can't protect you anymore. Little White can't understand Little Master's thoughts. Little White, don't you think that bad person called Mei Luo is a bit strange? She has a rotten smell on her body. It smells so bad. She stinks. When Feng Yi mentioned Mei Luo, his small brows furrowed. Mei Luo gave Little Yi a very bad feeling. Those 3 people clearly weren't good people, so why did he especially hate the one called Mei Luo? Feng Yi couldn't understand. He didn't know that this was his innate talent as an elf. Elves were all pure and kind. As the Elf King, Feng Yi could not only clearly feel the good and evil in people's hearts, he could even feel the deeply hidden demonic aura. If the vice principal was here, he would definitely understand what was going on. It was a pity that Feng Ye's memories from his previous life hadn't awakened. Although he had awakened some of his instincts, there were many things that he didn't understand. The current Feng Yi was still too young. His body couldn't withstand too much power. In the future, all of the Elf King's power would slowly be unsealed in his body. Little White didn't have Feng Ye's ability. It was already difficult for him to hide carefully without being discovered. How could he notice anything else? Thus, Little White shook his head honestly, indicating that he didn't notice anything. You didn't smell it? How is that possible? It's clearly so stinky. Little Bun didn't believe him. Little White shook his head firmly, indicating that he wasn't lying. After Little White repeatedly assured him, Little Bun finally believed him and didn't think too much about it. Little Master, there are many people outside looking for you. I saw a Jur and Mo Gui pass by this street several times. Little White impatiently transmitted his voice. If it wasn't for Little Master stopping him, he would have rushed out to inform a Jur and the others to save Little Master. It's fine. I'll write a letter. Help me pass it to Uncle Ajur and the others. Tell them not to look for me. I'll definitely be fine. Little Bun Feng Yi said with certainty, his voice soft and sweet. That night, after Ajur returned to the dormitory, he found a note in his room. The following was written on the note in crooked handwriting: Uncle Ajur, you don't have to look for me. I'll come back after defeating the bad guys. Little Yi left a message. Ajur spent a long time to recognize these words. Little Yi was a very smart child. He could recognize many words at such a young age, but just because he could recognize them, it didn't mean that he could write them. With such a small hand, it's already amazing that he can hold the brush properly. If you expect him to write well, then you're thinking too much. Little Yi. When you come back, I'll definitely spank your little butt. Ajur was so angry that he tore up the paper and threw it on the ground angrily. Then, he thought about it and immediately picked up the paper. Taking it with him, he aggressively went to find the vice principal. Their school's vice principal had always been elusive. Most of the school's matters were decided by the vice principal. For example, they naturally reported Little Ye's disappearance to the vice principal. The vice principal had just finished his dinner and was about to return to the study to read 18 forbidden novels while eating melon seeds. Unexpectedly, before he could take out the books, someone came knocking on the door. Chapter 586. Their school's biggest dean was always elusive. Usually, the vice dean was in charge of the school's affairs. Naturally, they would report Xiao Ye's disappearance to the vice dean. The vice dean had just finished his dinner and was about to return to his study to read 18 forbidden novels while eating melon seeds. Unexpectedly, before he could take out his book, someone came knocking on the door. The vice dean scratched his beard in annoyance and walked to the door to open it. Outside, he saw Ajur standing at the door with a very bad expression. The vice dean was bewildered. The school has already ended. Even if I am the vice dean, I still have private time to rest. Student Ajur, your behavior without consideration for others is unacceptable. As the vice dean, I must criticize you. The vice dean said angrily. Ajur passed the note that he suspected was written by Xiao Yi to the vice dean in annoyance. The vice dean looked at it and quickly read it. At first, he did not say a word, but then he glared at Ajur. You came looking for me in such a hurry just for this note? The vice president looked at Ajur, speechless. Unfortunately, Ajur's white hair and white beard made it impossible for others to see his expression. It wasn't easy for you to find a useful clue. Vice Dean, isn't your reaction a little too calm? Ajur said unhappily. He looked at the vice dean with a trace of suspicion and accusation. He had already noticed that the vice dean did not seem to be anxious about Xiao Ye's disappearance. This was not like the vice dean at all. The vice dean's attitude was so abnormal that Ajur was puzzled and puzzled. He felt that the vice dean was hiding something very important from the students. I already told you that nothing would happen to Xiao Yi. You just had to look for him with great fanfare. Isn't this asking for trouble? He had already advised these little fellows. Unfortunately, these little fellows did not listen at all. They even looked at his poor little heart with a look that said, "Why are you so cruel and heartless?" They really were a bunch of unlucky children who did not know how to respect their elders. Isn't all of this because you didn't make things clear? We don't know where Xiao Yi has been taken to, whether his life is in danger, and we don't know what that person's goal is. All you did was tell us not to worry, and you didn't do anything to help us find Xiao Yi. You didn't seem to care about him, and you didn't want us to not worry or look for him. How is that possible? If you want to reassure us, you have to tell us why you're so sure that nothing will happen to Xiao Yi. Ajur had long wanted to ask why the old man was so sure that Xiao Yi would be fine. He even said that Xiao Yi would come back on his own after he had enough fun. Come back on his own, my ass. If a child who was not even 2 years old could come back on his own, that would be a miracle. All right. Student Ajur, just do as Xiao Yi said in the letter. It's getting late, so I won't keep you any longer. You should go back to sleep. That's all. Good night, goodbye. Without waiting for Ajur's response, the door slammed shut with a bang, not leaving a single gap. Ajur cursed the stinky old man in his heart, and returned to the dormitory unwillingly. How was it? What did the vice president say? Ajur's roommates saw him enter and immediately surrounded him. The vice president told me to just do as Xiao Yi said in the letter, and not to worry about anything else. Ajur snorted through his nose. How can he do that? Xiao Yi said not to look for him, and he really didn't. He's not even 2 years old. And who knows if that note was left by Xiao Yi? Maybe someone deliberately left it here to confuse us. That's very possible. All right. Stop talking. Ajur raised his hand and gestured for them to stop, then said, I'm at least 90% sure that this note was written by Xiao Yi. Other than him, no one else could write such ugly handwriting. Rather than calling it handwriting, it was more like scribbles. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to copy Xiao Ye's handwriting. This was also why Ajur was more certain that the note was written by Xiao Ye's handwriting. Haven't you guys thought of a question? Xiao Yi is just a baby. How did he put the note in Ajur's room? Mo Gui, who had been standing behind the others without speaking, suddenly spoke up. The moment he opened his mouth, he brought up an important question that no one could ignore. Yes, the note could have been written by Xiao Yi, but Xiao Yi was just a baby. Could he have put the note in by himself? Don't joke around. How could a baby do something like that? If he could, then he would be a divine infant. That's right. Xiao Yi couldn't have run back to school and put the note in Ajur's room by himself. It's impossible. How old is Xiao Yi? He's just a little kid. How could he put the note down and leave school without alerting anyone? No matter how you look at it, it's impossible for Xiao Yi to do something like that. Ajur's roommates began to discuss amongst themselves, but no one could come up with a more reliable answer. I've got it. Mo Gui suddenly said. His sudden outburst gave everyone a fright, especially Ajur. Earlier, Ajur had been wondering if he had overlooked something, but Mo Gui's sudden outburst scared him away. What did you think? Everyone turned to look at Mo Gui. Mo Gui immediately said, Did you forget about Xiao Bai and Bao Bao? With Xiao Bai and Bao Bao by Xiao Ye's side, Xiao Yi was still taken away. This is a very strange thing. I suspect that Xiao Yi deliberately followed those people and then sent Bao Bao or Xiao Bai to send a message to us. Mo Gui finished his conjecture proudly, but when he turned around, he found everyone staring at him with wide eyes. "What are you looking at?" Mo Gui took 2 steps back. These people's gazes were strange and a little scary. "Nothing. I just suddenly realized that you can be so smart." It wasn't until Mo Gui brought it up that they realized something they had overlooked. Xiao Yi was accompanied by the Holy Mother and a talking magical beast of unknown species. With the protection of such a magical beast, Xiao Ye's disappearance was too unreasonable. There was a sense of strangeness in this. Bao Bao shouldn't be by Xiao Ye's side. That little guy appears and disappears all day, often disappearing without a trace. It's just like Xiao Wu's contract spirit, Liddy. Unless they want to, who knows where to find them. Chapter 587. Xiao Yi was accompanied by the Holy Mother and a talking magical beast of unknown species. With the protection of such a magical beast, Xiao Ye's disappearance was too unreasonable. There was a sense of strangeness in this. Bao Bao shouldn't be by Xiao Ye's side. That little guy appears and disappears all day long and often disappears without a trace. It's just like Xiao Wu's contract spirit, Liddy. Unless they're willing, who knows where to find them? Ajur shrugged. When it came to Feng Wu's contract spirit and beast that often ran out to play, he had a helpless look on his face. If they were his contracted spirit or contracted beast, he would definitely let them know what a qualified contracted spirit or contracted beast should look like. If they don't listen. If they don't listen, Ajur sneered. If they don't listen, I'll beat them until they listen. At this time, Liddy, who had run to a place full of yin qi to cultivate, suddenly felt a little cold. Liddy touched her neck. What's going on? Did she catch a cold? Strange. She already had a spirit body, why would she still feel cold? This wasn't scientific. Bao Bao was sleeping in a small nest in the spirit world, eating fresh fruits and looking at the beautiful scenery of the spirit world. It felt so beautiful. Ah Che. Bao Bao, who was leisurely eating fruits, suddenly sneezed loudly. Strange, who was scolding Bao Bao behind his back. Bao Bao pinched his fingers and calculated, isn't there still Little White? Little White definitely won't leave Xiao Ye's side. Don't forget that Little White is the Holy Mother beast that specializes in taking care of children. Everyone on the continent knew how much the Holy Mother beast loved children. They often took care of children more attentively than the children's biological parents. When the little master was taken away by bad people, the Holy Mother beast would definitely protect the child. It wouldn't turn a blind eye and run away. So after everyone discussed for a long time, they all thought that this letter was sent by Little White. But there was another problem. When did the Holy Mother beast have such a powerful ability to hide from so many people in the school? Was Little White that powerful? Although the legendary Holy Mother beast wasn't a weakling, it wasn't a powerful beast, nor was it a magical beast known for its speed and stealth. If it was really Little White, how did it manage to hide from so many teachers and deliver the note to the school? This was a question that no one could figure out. Ajur was still discussing whether or not Little White was the one who delivered the note, but Xiao Yi had already begun his first shift. Feng Yi didn't know what he got people to paint on Xiao Ye's head, but Xiao Ye's hair turned black. He turned into a black-haired, black-eyed child with the bloodline of the ancient Eastern Kingdom. Afraid that Xiao Yi would spout nonsense, Hua Jin even got the maid to put sleeping pills in Xiao Ye's milk bottle so that he would sleep through the entire journey. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Xiao Yi had pure elven blood flowing in his body. Elves were immune to any harmful drugs. Xiao Yi and Steamed Bun pretended to fall asleep while Feng Yi arranged for a black-haired and black-eyed couple with Eastern bloodline to take Xiao Yi and leave Central City. In order not to attract attention, they definitely couldn't use the teleportation portal. The transportation they chose was very simple, which was an ordinary cargo ship. This couple with Eastern bloodline was sent by the Hound's mercenary group. In the Hound's mercenary group, there happened to be a couple with Eastern bloodline. In order to cover their tracks, they also brought along a 5-year-old boy. This boy also had an Eastern face. The little boy was just a prop that they had brought along to successfully send Xiaoyi away. They had already agreed with the little boy's parents that they would borrow their child once. They had even agreed on the remuneration and paid more than half of the deposit up front. This little boy looked very smart. His pair of black eyes kept darting around. He didn't feel guilty at all when he called a pair of strangers his parents. It was no wonder that he could help his parents earn money at such a young age. "Mommy, is little brother still sleeping? When can he wake up and play with me?" The little boy adorably pulled the rather beautiful black-haired woman beside him. "Little brother is still young, so he naturally sleeps a bit. You have to be good, don't wake him up, okay?" The black-haired woman's face was filled with motherly radiance. If she didn't know that she couldn't be the mother of these 2 children, she would have believed that these 2 children were her own. This was acting. She was indeed a natural-born actress. That year when the opera house refused to accept her, it was their biggest loss. When the other guests on the ship saw this scene of a loving mother and a filial son, they all let out knowing smiles. There was also a woman with a child talking to the woman. The woman's performance was very perfect. She didn't reveal any flaws when talking to other women. Only when they entered the cabin did the woman and man return to normal. The expression of a loving mother and strict father on their faces was also completely wiped away. "Boss's business is too strange. He just let us pick up this little devil. Where did this little devil come from? Could he be the son of some big shot?" The woman sat at the head of the bed. She placed Xiaoyi in the middle of the bed. Meanwhile, the other child started eating as soon as he entered the room, completely ignoring what they were saying. "Who knows? Either way, we're only doing this for the money. Who cares whose son he is?" The man took out a roast chicken from his storage bag. He grabbed it with his hands and started eating without washing his hands. Eating the roast chicken was not satisfying enough. He took out a huge mug of beer and started drinking it with the meat. The smell of meat and wine wafted out of the small cabin. "You're right, after we hand over the goods, we'll take the money and leave." A while ago, a new set of magic equipment was put up in the store. "With the money, we'll be able to buy it." The woman smiled charmingly as she recalled the magic equipment she had been eyeing for a long time. "It just so happens that I'm interested in a sword too. Let's go together. We might be able to get the boss to give us a discount," said the man. "Then let's go together. With my beauty, I don't believe the boss won't give us a discount." The man and woman chatted while eating. They completely ignored the 2 children in the cabin. The 5-year-old child seemed to be used to it. He ate the food in his mouth indifferently. The man and woman still had some conscience and gave him 2 wings. Naturally, the 2 big chicken legs were divided between the 2 of them. Xiaoyi pretended to be asleep. He was eavesdropping on the conversation between the man and woman. Where were they taking him? Were those bad guys trying to harm him? Didn't they say they were keeping him to deal with his mother? Why didn't they keep their promise? It's wrong to trick a kid like that. Don't think you can trick a kid just because he's young. Chapter 588. Xiaoyi pretended to be asleep as he listened to the couple's conversation. "Where are they taking me? Are those bad guys trying to harm me? Didn't they say they were keeping me to deal with mom? Why didn't you keep your word? It's wrong of you to lie to a child like this. Don't think that you can fool him just because he's young." No one in the school realized that Xiaoyi had been taken away. The little bun had already been packed up and taken out of Central City, and the city was still frantically searching for him. Teresa had also thought that someone would take the little bun out of the city, so she had already informed the guards guarding the transportation portal, the docks, and the flying beast station that if they saw someone carrying a 2-year-old boy with white hair and black eyes trying to leave Central City, they must stop them and wait for her confirmation before letting them go. Teresa did not expect that the people who wanted to take the little bun had already come up with a plan. As members of the Notre Dame du Starlight, it was easy for Hua Jin and Feng Yi to find out what Teresa's plan was. Feng Yi had already made ample preparations to deal with Teresa's plan. Before Teresa received any news, the little bun had already been sent on a ship. No one knew where the little bun was being sent, but it could not be a good place. Feng Wu was still unaware that her baby had been kidnapped. She and Ming Shi were currently on their way to a place called Coral Island. It was a small island with beautiful scenery and abundant resources. There was a reason why Ming Shi and Feng Wu were going to this small island when they had already planned to return to school. Coral Island was a private island. The owner of this island was a madam named Noramanda. This madam was the Moon Empress' best friend when she was young. Later on, one of them married the owner of Coral Island, while the other married the Moon Emperor. As one of them lived on land while the other lived on the island, their contact gradually decreased. The two had not met for many years. Mrs. Normanda's husband had passed away in an accident not long after she gave birth to her son and daughter. Mrs. Normanda was a strong woman. She had taken care of her children and guarded the estate her husband had left behind all these years. Her life was not bad. This time, Ming Shi and the others went to Coral Island because the Moon Empress had received Madame Noramanda's distress letter. 2 days ago, black smoke suddenly emerged from the seawater surrounding the Coral Island. After absorbing the black smoke, many of the island's residents became bloodthirsty and cruel, and started a massacre on the island. Although those people were dealt with by the experts dispatched by Madame Noramanda, the matter was far from over. The black smoke continued to emerge from the sea, and most of the island's residents were infected by the black smoke, becoming increasingly inhumane. The originally peaceful island had become a purgatory on Earth. Madame Norman tried her best but was unable to prevent the people on the island from being corroded by the black fog. As for those who were not affected, Madame Normand immediately arranged for them to leave the Coral Island through a transmission array. Now, apart from the humans and animals who had lost their humanity due to the black fog, there were no other intelligent creatures left on the island. Due to the black fog, not only were the humans affected, but many of the island's magic beasts were affected as well. There were also the plants. Almost all the plants that were originally harmless ornamental plants became monsters that were more than 10 meters tall, brandishing their branches and leaves, and attacking every living creature they saw. As the owner of the island, Madame Normand had no choice but to take all the survivors and flee to another small island. Fortunately, Madame Normand had managed the island well over the years. She had also bought 2 smaller islands near the Coral Island, allowing the fishermen on the Coral Island to have a place to live. Otherwise, with so many people, it would be difficult to find a place to stay when they arrived at someone else's territory. Moreover, who knew how long they would have to stay there? That's how it is. I also don't know why the black smoke is emerging. Ming Shi, this matter is too strange. You have a special identity, so it's better for you to go back. Really, Lu Li, why did she send you here? If something were to happen to you at Aunt Normand's place, Aunt Normand wouldn't be able to repay the sin even if she died. Normand sighed, wanting to persuade Ming Shi not to participate in this matter. Although she was the owner of the Coral Island and wanted to save the villagers, innocent magic beasts, and plants on the island that were harmed by the black fog, Ming Shi's identity was too special. She couldn't let anything happen to Ming Shi on her island. If something were to happen to Ming Shi on her island, she couldn't imagine the consequences. Aunt Normand, do you have no confidence in Ming Shi? Ming Shi smiled faintly. His smile was elegant and noble, as if there was a layer of golden light shining on his face. You know that's not what Aunt Normand meant. Normand frowned and sighed. She knew that Ming Shi wasn't a child that could be persuaded so easily. I know that Aunt Normand is worried about me. I believe that Aunt Normand also knows that I'm not the type to act recklessly. If it's really beyond the scope of my ability, I'll immediately inform Father and let him send someone suitable over. All right then. Since you've said so, what else can Aunt Norman say? You have to remember what you said. If the situation doesn't seem right, then go back immediately. Madame Norman took a step back and temporarily agreed to let Ming Shi stay behind to investigate the cause of the black fog's appearance and research a way to deal with it. Ming Shi and Madame Norman were talking in the room, while Feng Wu and Madame Norman's daughter were having lunch together. The lunch was very sumptuous. It was all seafood that was relatively rare in the sea. Feng Wu happily gorged herself, without the slightest awareness of protecting her image in front of her master. Phyllis was Madame Norman's daughter. She was a very beautiful lady. She had been strictly raised by Madame Norman since she was a child. Her every move was as precise as if it had been measured with a ruler. When eating, how many times to chew for each bite was a habit engraved in her bones. Since she was a child, the women that Phyllis had come into contact with were all noble ladies like her. The so-called nobles all had a common problem, and that was that they cared a lot about their image. In front of outsiders, they would definitely show off their nobility, elegance, and extraordinary taste to the extreme, afraid that others would think that they weren't noble enough. Since she was a child, all the women that Phyllis had seen were as elegant as her. Every move of theirs was as graceful as a poem or a painting. Phyllis had never seen a woman like Feng Wu, who would eat so much at the dining table. At the same time, she felt a faint sense of disdain in her heart. Fortunately, Phyllis's upbringing was good enough. She would never make such rude and vulgar actions as taunting or cursing. Chapter 589. Ever since she was a child, Phyllis had only seen noble women who were as elegant as her. Every action of theirs was as graceful as a painting. Phyllis had never seen a woman like Feng Wu who could eat so much at the dining table. At the same time, she felt a faint sense of disdain for her. Fortunately, Phyllis had a good upbringing. She would never make such rude and vulgar actions as taunting or cursing. Feng Wu ate very quickly. In a short while, she had finished all the delicacies on the table. Phyllis silently put down her cutlery. She had only eaten a few mouthfuls of fish and didn't feel full at all. I wonder if these dishes are to Miss Feng Wu's taste. Phyllis knew that this girl was Ming Shi's future wife. Even though she looked down on the other party's lack of elegance, at least she didn't show any displeasure on her face. It's very delicious. Feng Wu looked at Phyllis and nodded seriously. The taste is a little bland. You can add a little salter next time, Feng Wu said after thinking for a while. The grilled fish didn't seem to have enough salt. If only there was a little more salt, it would be even more delicious. Feng Wu thought with some pity. Phyllis. Shouldn't she say that the food was very delicious and thank you for your hospitality? This was the first time she had seen someone give such a serious suggestion. Miss Phyllis felt a little speechless. Is that so? When dinner comes, I will definitely remind the chef to add more salt in the food. Because our family of 3 is used to bland food, the chef is also used to cooking bland food. This is our negligence. I'm really sorry. Phyllis apologized sincerely. If it was someone else, she would have said a few polite words. But who was the Feng Wu girl? She had never understood these things. Naturally, she wouldn't say any polite words. It's okay. Just be careful next time, Feng Wu girl said. Phyllis. Can't we have a proper conversation? She suppressed her anger and told herself that she was an aristocrat and a lady. She had to be elegant and noble. She wasn't angry. She wasn't angry. After entertaining Feng Wu for lunch, Mrs. Noranda's son, Jerfman, just came back. Phyllis immediately threw the guest to her brother, and then went back to her room to rest with an unwell expression on her face. Jerfman. His sister was acting strange today. He couldn't understand her. As the future successor of Coral Island, there was no problem with entertaining Feng Wu. After circling around the island with Feng Wu, Jerfman realized that the girl seemed to have a special obsession with food. Every time she saw an ingredient that he casually said was very delicious, her eyes would sparkle. It was easy to understand what she was thinking at this time. Jerfman was a teenager with a relatively clear mind. He immediately took Funwu to see a lot of ingredients that could be made into food. He also took the Funwu girl to the island to enjoy the local snacks. The Funwu girl was satisfied. Her small belly was round. Of course, when she went back, she didn't forget to pack a portion for Ming-Shi. Jerfman felt that if Ming-Shi ate this pile of food, he wouldn't have to eat dinner and tomorrow's breakfast. After eating a big round, Jerfman said that he was full just by looking. Seeing that Funwu girl was eating too much, as a responsible host, Jerfman decided to take the Funwu girl to the seaside to digest. After arriving at the seaside, Jerfman was silent when he saw the Funwu girl catching crabs with a group of children. She still couldn't live without food. Looking at her sparkling eyes, he dared to bet a gold coin that all kinds of delicious crabs were playing in the Funwu girl's mind. Ah! A person suddenly appeared beside Jerfman, giving him a fright. Can't you make a little noise when you walk? Don't you know that you can scare people to death? Although he was complaining in his heart, the other person came to help him solve the problem, so he couldn't roll his eyes at him. Skycliff, where did you go just now? I took Miss Funwu around the island and didn't see you. Jerfman said. Skycliff also accompanied Ming-Shi to the Coral Island. In fact, Ming-Shi only brought two people, one was Funwu and the other was Skycliff. As Ming-Shi's personal bodyguard, Skycliff naturally had to follow Ming-Shi to protect him. Since coming to the island, Skycliff had disappeared without a trace. He didn't even have lunch with Funwu and the others. No one knew where he went until now, when he mysteriously appeared. I didn't go anywhere. I was just walking around. Skycliff was still as quiet as ever. His eyes were cold. Those who didn't know him would think that he was an emotionless iceman. Jerfman felt the chill in his face. Forget it, it's better to talk less. Why are you all catching crabs here? While Jerfman and Skycliff were silent, Ming-Shi came over from the other side. Funwu glanced at him and threw herself back into catching crabs. I was just playing with Miss Funwu to help with digestion. Have you eaten lunch? Jerfman and Ming-Shi were quite familiar with each other. After all, the two families had a good relationship. He also played with Ming-Shi more than once when he was a child. It was just that they grew up and each had their own studies, so they didn't see each other much. I just ate a little. After Ming-Shi finished speaking, he looked at Skycliff. Skycliff, I heard that you didn't have lunch with Xiao Wu. Well, I just wanted to walk around. Skycliff said coldly. Ming-Shi didn't have any other intentions. He was just worried that Skycliff might not have eaten lunch. Have you eaten lunch? Yes. Well, since he said that he had eaten, Ming-Shi believed that Skycliff had indeed eaten. I plan to go to Coral Island early tomorrow morning. Ming-Shi looked at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Okay, I'll go with you. I'm the future island master. You can't leave me out. Jerfman had already made up his mind. No matter who came, he would follow them to the island. After all, Coral Island was his family's property. If everyone in his family hid, it would be too outrageous if word got out. I was going to call you. We are not familiar with the terrain of Coral Island. If we don't have someone familiar with the terrain to lead the way, it will be really difficult to get on the island. Ming-Shi smiled indifferently. Of course, I grew up on Coral Island. Who can be more familiar with the island's environment than me? This was indeed true. As the young island master, Jerfman knew many secret places on the island that others didn't know. After all, the island was private property. Some places were not open to the public. Even the native islanders were not allowed to enter. Chapter 590. This was indeed reasonable. As the young island master, Jerfman knew many secrets about the island that others didn't. After all, the island was private property, and some places were not open to the public. Even the native islanders were not allowed to enter. Early the next morning, Mingxi took Fengwu and Skycliff to have an early breakfast and waited to go to Coral Island to investigate the situation. Jerfman brought along a few skilled guards who were selected to enter the Coral Island together. Madame Normand was worried about Mingxi's safety. These people were mainly sent to protect Mingxi. Mingxi knew that this was Madame Normand's good intentions and couldn't refuse, so he could only acquiesce. Fortunately, Coral Island had already established a teleportation array with Madame Normand's new island. There were about 30 people in their group. They entered the teleportation array in batches. After a few flashes of white light, everyone was teleported to Coral Island. This is Coral Island. Mingxi frowned as he looked at the plants in front of him that covered the sky and the sun, as well as the heart-chilling roars. In any case, he couldn't associate this place with the beautiful Coral Island. That's right. Whether it's plants, magic beasts, or even humans on this island, as long as they are corroded by the black fog, they will become different. Jerfman said. What is the source of the black fog? Don't you have any clues? Did you send people to the bottom of the sea to take a look? Mingxi asked again. The appearance of the black fog was too strange. Mingxi suspected that something else might have appeared at the bottom of the sea. Your Royal Highness may not know, but Madame has already sent people to take a look. The seawater around Coral Island is too polluted. As soon as we sent people into the sea, they were immediately corroded by the seawater until not even dregs were left. Madame didn't dare to send people down to prevent everyone's sacrifice in vain. Although everyone knows that the source of the black fog is at the bottom of the sea, there is nothing we can do. No one can survive in the polluted sea water, let alone go down to check the situation. The one who spoke was Madame Normand's trusted aide. Madame Normand had specially sent him to check the situation on Coral Island because he was meticulous and loyal. Moreover, he knew a lot about the island. If Mingxi and the others wanted to go too deep into a dangerous place, he could stop them. It could be said that Lady Noramanda had thought of everything. She was just afraid that Mingxi would meet with some mishap on the island. Can't go into the water. She did not expect the problem to be so serious that he could not even go into the water to check. This was going to be troublesome. Did the black fog appear on the other islands nearby? Mingxi asked after pondering for a moment. No. Jerfman shook his head. They had inquired about this matter early on, and it turned out that their Coral Island was the only place that encountered such a strange thing. Did anything strange happen before the black fog appeared? Mingxi asked. Jerfman shook his head. If there were any abnormalities, they would not have to work so hard to investigate. Let's go. Let's take a look around first. The black fog would never appear for no reason. There must be some reason we don't know. There were no clues, but Mingxi was not disappointed. He let Jerfman lead the way. He wanted to check the island's surroundings first. Fengwu obediently followed behind Mingxi, but Xiaochun in his dantian was acting strangely. Leave this place quickly. It's dangerous here. Leave quickly. Xiaochun's somewhat immature voice suddenly sounded. There was a rare nervousness and uneasiness in his voice. Fengwu, what happened? Xiaochun, there's something wrong with this place. I feel a strong aura surrounding this island. Although I don't know what it is, I can feel that it's very dangerous. It's not something you can deal with right now. Fengwu, even you can't deal with it. Xiaochun, no, most of my purification ability comes from you. The previous things could be easily purified because their master's level was not as high as mine. That's why I could purify those bad auras so easily. However, the level of the things we encountered this time is too high. Before you reach the level of a warlock saint, I can't purify this place. Xiaochun's voice was anxious and fast. This was not in line with Ming Shi's character, who wanted to rush up and eat whenever he saw something delicious. Xiaochun desperately tried to persuade Feng Wu to leave as soon as possible. The things here were obviously beyond his ability. Because Feng Wu, his master, was still growing, even his purification power had not reached its peak. "What's wrong?" Ming Shi asked worriedly when he turned around and saw that Feng Wu's expression had changed slightly. "There's danger here. Let's leave quickly." Feng Wu believed in Xiaochun's judgment. Xiaochun had always been Feng Wu's good partner and friend. Feng Wu would not hesitate to trust people she trusted. She looked at Ming Shi seriously, hoping that Ming Shi could leave with her quickly. "No, I promised Mother that I would help Aunt Noramanda solve the problem on Coral Island. We can't leave yet. Are you afraid? Do you want me to send you back to Aunt Noramanda's place and wait for us?" Ming Shi said with a doting gaze. Feng Wu shook her head. Of course, she could not leave if Ming Shi did not want to leave. She wanted to be with Ming Shi. "Why don't I send someone to send Miss Feng Wu back to my mother's place first? The environment here is really not suitable for a girl to stay," Jerfman said. When Ming Shi said that he wanted to bring Feng Wu along, Jerfman did not agree. When they were introduced, he heard Ming Shi say that Miss Feng Wu was just a second-year student at Notre Dame du Starlight. Her strength should not be strong. The island was so dangerous. Wouldn't bringing such a girl along be a burden? Now that Feng Wu proposed to leave, he certainly could not object. He even enthusiastically suggested it. "I'm not leaving. I'll follow Ming Shi." Feng Wu shook her head and said seriously. Ming Shi patted her little head and did not say anything about letting Feng Wu go back first. On the other hand, Jerfman was a little disappointed. He thought that he could finally send Feng Wu back first. He was afraid that Feng Wu would scream at the slightest thing. All the mutated creatures here were very sensitive to sound, and women were undoubtedly creatures that loved to scream the most. Fortunately, before entering Coral Island, Jerfman had already told Ming Shi and the others about some of the characteristics of the mutated creatures on the island. The people he brought with him were all veterans. Naturally, he did not have to worry about them doing anything that would arouse the hostility of the mutated creatures. Jerfman was most worried about the Feng Wu girl. Although he observed that the girl did not seem to like to talk much, that did not mean that she would not scream. Jerfman had always been on tenterhooks, afraid that the whole team would be screwed over by a woman. Chapter 591. Furthermore, he had brought some veteran soldiers with him. Naturally, he did not have to worry about them doing anything that would arouse the hostility of the mutant creatures. What Jerfman was most worried about was the Feng Wu girl. Although from his observation, the girl did not seem to like to talk much, not liking to talk did not mean that she would not scream. Jerfman had always been on tenterhooks, fearing that the whole team would be tricked by a woman. Feng Wu did not know what Jerfman was thinking. If she knew, she would most likely prove very seriously that she was not a little girl who only knew how to cry and scream. She was very brave. Master said so. Just as Ming Shi and the others were exploring Coral Island, on a large ship, a beautiful woman in purple stood at the bow of the ship and looked at the island that was constantly emitting black smoke, her brows furrowing more and more. "Are you sure your arm is under this island?" Zicheng stood alone at the bow of the ship, with no one else around her. If someone looked at her, they would only think that she was talking to herself. The crew on the ship were already used to this beautiful employer. From time to time, she would talk to herself in a language that they could not understand. In this regard, they only glanced at her a few times and no longer paid attention. However, there was a young man whose eyes drifted to Zicheng from time to time, with an unobvious admiration and infatuation in his eyes. "Hey, kid, what are you looking at? That's a Miss Mage. No matter what thoughts you have, you'd better put them away. Offending a mage is not a joke." An old crew member looked at the kid's eyes and knew that he was fascinated by the beautiful and noble Miss Mage. I don't have any other thoughts. I just want to be Miss Zicheng's follower. The kid was only in his 20s and was still very young. Because his talent was not good, he could only stay here and work as a crew member. 3 days ago, when he first saw Zicheng, he fell in love with her at first sight. As long as he could stay by Miss Zicheng's side, even if he could only be her follower for the rest of his life, he would have no regrets. Hee. The old sailor sneered. Another child who couldn't recognize reality. What right do you have to be Miss Zicheng's follower? Are you strong and talented? You have nothing. What right do you have to become the follower of a great magician? The young man's beautiful dream was ruthlessly crushed by the old crew member. Yes, it was not easy to become a magician's follower. He was just an ordinary young man with nothing. Why did he think that as long as he asked, Miss Zicheng would accept him? Where did his confidence come from? The young man took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, there was a trace of clarity in his eyes. Thank you. I almost misunderstood. The old crew member patted him on the shoulder, revealing a mouthful of yellowish teeth. It's good that you can figure it out. After that, he ignored the young man and went to the back cabin to work. Zicheng did not know that not far from her, there was a young man who adored her. He had just suppressed his thoughts. She was now discussing important matters with the devil ancestor. The devil ancestor was an unknown creature that she had awakened when she was doing a mission. Later on, the devil ancestor told her how he had been suppressed in the mirage. Zicheng felt that the devil ancestor was quite pitiful. He was the supreme being of the devil realm, but in the end, his position was snatched away by the fallen devil god. He fled to the human world and was treated as an invader by humans. In the end, he did not even keep his physical body. Only his soul was preserved and was sealed in the mirage. This Lord Devil Ancestor's life was simply a coffee table. After Zicheng heard the Devil Ancestor's story, she agreed to rebuild his physical body and let him return to the Devil realm. She used the system to exchange for a container that could hold souls. Then, she guided the Devil Ancestor's soul into the container and brought it out of the mirage. Even the Devil Ancestor himself did not expect that this little girl, who did not look very powerful, could bring him out of the place where he was sealed so easily. This was probably another cheat that the world's consciousness gave to the female lead. The reason why the female lead was able to become a heroine and goddess that everyone on the Heavenly Wind continent looked up to in the later stages was because of this devil ancestor. If she had not been so foolish as to believe the words of a devil and let the devil ancestor out, the devil ancestor would not have started a massacre in the human world and wanted to take over the human world for himself. Unfortunately, in the original story, the humans did not know that all of this was caused by Zicheng. Instead, they created a statue for her and worshipped her like she was their savior. Now, this had not happened yet. However, the devil ancestor was still released by Zicheng like in the original story. Now, she was busy rebuilding the devil ancestor's physical body. This king can sense that one of this king's arms is under this island. This arm must be retrieved. The devil ancestor's voice had a trace of devilishness. Just listening to the voice had endless charm. One could imagine that the devil ancestor's appearance was not bad. Among the devil race, there were many naturally ugly devils, but there were also many naturally beautiful devils. The devil ancestor was the first devil race to be born in this world. Naturally, his appearance could not be bad. If he was really ugly, the female lead would not have been sympathetic to him and agreed to help him rebuild his physical body and return to the devil realm. I understand. But how are we going to get it back? That island has already been sealed. Outsiders cannot go there. Zicheng said. I will go there personally. I will be able to get it back very quickly. My arm, on the other ship, the supporting female lead, Irene, had also come to this place. She did not want to stop the female lead from getting the devil ancestor's arm. With her small body, she was not a match for the devil ancestor. It was better not to do such a suicidal thing. The reason why she appeared here was because she had come with Fengwu's brother, Feng Juntian. After Irene left the Blue Moon world, she was saved by Feng Juntian, who was out on a mission. Feng Juntian recognized that Irene was Fengwu's classmate. On account of his sister, he could not save her. Because of Feng Juntian's treatment, Irene's body recovered very quickly. Every time Irene saw Feng Juntian, she would feel a sense of self-blame. Although Fengwu was brought to the Blue Moon world by the Blue Moon Duke, she did not choose to bring Fengwu with her when she escaped. This was equivalent to leaving Fengwu to die in that place. However, she was saved by Fengwu's brother. Every time she thought of this, she could not help but blame herself. She did not save the other person's sister back then, but now she was saved by Fengwu's brother. This was a terrible debt that she could not understand no matter how she thought about it. She did not even dare to tell Fengwu's news to Feng Juntian. She could not explain why she was able to escape and return, but Fengwu was not. A few days ago, she did not know how to face Feng Juntian, so she was prepared to say goodbye and return to school. Unexpectedly, Feng Juntian received an urgent mission from the Star Hall, asking him to rush to the Coral Island to investigate the truth behind the changes on the island. Hearing about the changes on the Coral Island, Irene could not just leave. She knew that the reason for the changes on the Coral Island was because the Devil Ancestor's arm sensed the Devil Ancestor's birth, so it sent a signal to the Devil Ancestor. Chapter 592. A few days ago, she really didn't know how to face Feng Juntian, so she was prepared to say goodbye and return to school. Unexpectedly, Feng Juntian received an urgent mission from the Star Hall, asking him to rush to the Coral Island to investigate the truth behind the changes on the island. Hearing the news of the changes on the Coral Island, Irene really couldn't just leave. She knew that the reason for the changes on the Coral Island was because the Demon Ancestor's arm sensed the Demon Ancestor's birth, so it sent a signal to the Demon Ancestor. If they went to the Coral Island now, it was very likely that they would run into the Demon Ancestor. If they encountered the Demon Ancestor, there was an 80% chance that they would lose their lives on the Coral Island. Even if they were lucky and didn't encounter the Demon Ancestor, the Demon Ancestor's arm wasn't to be trifled with. The gas it released could cause all living things to mutate. Its power was so great that it could compete with the zombie virus in the apocalyptic world. In short, even if it was to repay the favor of saving her life, she really couldn't let Feng Juntian go to the Coral Island alone. Irene stood at the bow of the ship and sighed as she looked at the island surrounded by the black fog. She didn't know if it was the right choice for her to wade into the muddy waters. God, you must bless me and let me live from the hands of that great demon ancestor. After circling the island and killing who knew how many villagers who had turned into monsters, Ming Shi and the others still didn't find any clues about the changes on the island. Fengwu followed behind Ming Shi the whole time. Unexpectedly, she didn't even scream. Moreover, she didn't ask for help when killing monsters. Her attacks were fast, ruthless, and accurate. She wasn't much worse than some of the experienced warriors brought by Jerfman. After circling the island without finding anything, several hours had passed unknowingly. Jerfman suggested that everyone withdraw first and discuss their next move, but Ming Shi felt that it was still early and that they should wait and see. In the end, everyone listened to Ming Shi and planned to circle the island 2 more times. This time, they specifically went to some suspicious and hidden places that people usually didn't go. Jerfman proposed to go to the edge of the cliff by the sea. There was a very hidden cave on the cliff that people usually didn't go there. Perhaps the source of the black fog was related to that cave. Ming Shi was not familiar with the environment on the island, and of course, he did not know where the more secluded places were, so the job of leading the way fell to Jerfman. Everyone followed Jerfman to the edge of the cliff and found the cave he had mentioned. After searching the cave, they found nothing. There was no problem here, so Jerfman led the way to the next suspicious location. However, after walking for less than 10 minutes, Fenwu suddenly saw two bloodthirsty spirits baring their fangs and claws. These two spiritual bodies were filled with baleful aura. Furthermore, they had no consciousness and were full of aggression. Ming Shi and the others were completely unaware that there were two evil spirits that wanted to harm them. There were no necromancers in their group, so they didn't even notice the two evil spirits hovering in front of them. The only person who discovered them was the Fenwu girl. Fenwu not only discovered two evil spirits, but also many dead souls not far away from them. They wandered around the island in a daze, their eyes bloodshot and without any consciousness. Among so many undead, the two standing at the front had the strongest baleful aura, much stronger than all the other spirits. Fenwu thought about it and made a decision. Before the others could react, Fenwu pulled out her pure sword. The white sword light on the pure sword was very dazzling. The appearance of this sword light made the black fog in the vicinity dissipate a little, and those undead seemed to feel a natural fear and didn't dare to approach. "What's wrong? What happened?" Jerfman immediately drew his sword and asked when he saw Fenwu draw her weapon. The others were also on guard, but they did not find anything suspicious. "I say, Miss Fenwu, can we not joke like this?" Jerfman put away his long sword and waved for the others he brought to put away their weapons as well. "I'm not joking." Fenwu tilted her head in confusion. She was not joking, so why did this person say that to her? The Fenwu girl pursed her lips unhappily. "Xiao Wu, is there something special in front?" Ming Shi knew the Fenwu girl better and knew that she would not joke at a time like this. It should be said that he had known the Fenwu girl for so long, but he had never seen her joke. The Fenwu girl nodded obediently. "There are many spirits in front. They have turned into evil spirits and want to attack us. Miss Fenwu, you are a necromancer." Lady Noramanda's chief bodyguard, who was also her trusted aide, said with a face full of respect. The other warriors also looked at Fenwu in a different light. They all thought that Fenwu was a warrior like them. They did not expect her to be a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. "What a genius!" "No," Fenwu said. "You are so humble." The others obviously did not believe her. She could see the spirits, so who could she be? In this world, other than necromancers, only people who used psychic potions could see the spirits for a short period of time. But Fenwu had been with them all this time, and no one had seen her use psychic potions. So the final conclusion was that Fenwu was a rare necromancer. Fenwu, was she humble? "Miss Fenwu, those things won't attack us, right?" One of the warriors was obviously very afraid of spirits. Now, his little face was pale with fright. "Yes, they will." In fact, they were walking towards them. Hearing this answer, the warrior who was afraid of ghosts felt terrible. His little face was pale as he hid in the crowd, refusing to show his face no matter what. "Xiao Wu, you want to purify them?" Ming Shi thought of how Fenwu had pulled out the pure sword just now. He knew how strong the purifying power of the pure sword was. He had personally used this sword before. When the first problem occurred in Blood Moon Forest, he had borrowed the pure sword from Fenwu to solve it smoothly. "Yes." Fenwu nodded. Purifying these spirits would also benefit the pure sword, which was why Xiaoqun was so interested in purifying these things. He had been pestering her to purify them since just now. "Miss Fenwu, so you know how to purify as well. Please do it quickly. If those things come to attack us, we will be in big trouble." The warrior who was afraid of ghosts jumped out to show his presence again. "I was just about to do it," Fenwu said. After saying this, she raised the pure sword. Using the purifying power of the pure sword, she waved the sword towards the spirits. The spirits immediately let out sharp and mournful screams. These screams made people's ears uncomfortable. Their hearts were scared, their backs were cold, and they felt uncomfortable. Some people even used their hands to cover their ears. This sound was simply too unpleasant. If they didn't cover their ears, they wouldn't be able to take it. Chapter 593. These screams made people's ears uncomfortable. Their hearts were scared, their backs were cold, and they felt uncomfortable all over. Some people even covered their ears with their hands. This sound was simply too unpleasant to hear. If they didn't cover their ears, they wouldn't be able to bear it. This sound was completely strange. No matter how hard you covered your ears, you could still hear the miserable screams. The pain that was branded in the soul made people feel a trace of panic and fear. Finally, the screams gradually disappeared, and the undead recovered their senses. They looked blankly at Ming-Shi and the others, somewhat at a loss. Someone wanted to step forward and ask something. Only after taking a step forward did they remember that they were already dead. Thinking that they were already dead, these undead's faces turned gloomy. Although knowing that they were already dead was not a pleasant thing, the undead still politely thanked Fengwu, and then dissipated into the sky one by one. They did not disappear, but rather reincarnated. Fengwu had purified their souls, giving them the opportunity to reincarnate. Although Fengwu was not a necromancer, she had also benefited a lot from helping the undead. The undead creatures disappeared one after another. The two that had been on Fengwu's side at first and had the most murderous aura stayed behind. They looked like they wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. It was obvious that they had something to say. Ming-Shi saw Fengwu staring at a place with a puzzled expression, so he asked her if something had happened. Fengwu naturally would not conceal it from Ming-Shi. She told Ming-Shi about the two undead's abnormal behavior. Ming-Shi guessed that the two undead might know something, so he let Fengwu ask them. Fengwu obediently began to ask the two undead why they were unwilling to leave. The two undead first gritted their teeth, somewhat embarrassed to speak. Finally, they told them a piece of news that surprised everyone. Of the two undead, one looked to be in his 50s, while the other looked to be in his early 20s. They said that they were father and son, and were just ordinary fishermen on the Coral Island. Not long ago, when the father and son were mining on the island, they dug out a cave that led to an unknown place. The father and son should have reported this matter to the higher-ups, but they were a little greedy and wanted to take some valuable things out of the cave before it was discovered. Although they were scheming, they never thought of hiding the cave. They just wanted to get some benefits before reporting it. What the father and son did not know was that their greed had harmed them and everyone else on the island. The father and son walked along the entrance of the cave. After walking for a long time, they finally reached the end of the tunnel. The end of the tunnel was underground. When the father and son reached the end, they found a 2-meter-long box at the end of the tunnel. The box looked very gorgeous, and it was even inlaid with many gems. The father and son were just ordinary fishermen. When had they ever seen such a precious gem? They were immediately dumbfounded. There was a white seal in the middle of the box, and the seal was filled with red magic incantations. If the father and son had not thought of taking advantage of the situation and had directly reported it, then with Madame Norman's knowledge, she would have discovered that it was a sealing scroll. Moreover, it was a very high-level sealing scroll. These scrolls were usually used to seal extremely terrifying monsters. However, the father and son did not have such knowledge. They only saw that the box was so precious, and thought that the things inside the box must be even more precious. Therefore, they only pondered for 3 seconds, before the father and son opened the sealing scroll together. Using a sealing scroll to seal a monster required a lot of power, but opening it didn't require that. Therefore, the father and son pair easily opened the sealing scroll on the box. When the scroll was opened, the father and son impatiently opened the box, wanting to see what treasures were inside. They did not expect that when the box was opened, they would only see a black mist rising into the sky. Then, they would not know what happened. The father and son were simply courting death. Moreover, before they died, they did not even see what was inside the box. Then, when they regained consciousness, they were already undead. The Fengwu girl purified their fiendish aura, allowing them to regain consciousness. What? So it was you two who brought disaster to our entire Coral Island. These warriors were so angry that they wished the father and son would die again. Because of their greed, so many people were killed and the Coral Island was in such a state. The death of these two people was truly not to be regretted. If they had not died, they would have caught the father and son and killed them in front of everyone to avenge their dead brothers and the villagers. The dead father and son desperately apologized to them. Unfortunately, apart from Fengwu, no one could hear their words or see their ghostly figures. Therefore, their apology would never be heard or accepted by the warriors. You two deserve to die. As the young island master, Jerfman also wished that he could dismember the father and son. Unfortunately, the father and son were already dead. Moreover, it was unknown whether their corpses were still there. Take us to the cave. Ming Shi was relatively rational. He did not waste time cursing. He just wanted to find the cave and solve the island's problem as soon as possible. However, he did not know what was sealed on this Coral Island that could turn the entire Coral Island into this state. This thing was by no means simple. The father and son were not really bad people. They just wanted to take advantage of others. They never thought of harming others. Now that they had harmed so many people, their minds were full of thoughts of making up for their mistakes. Because of this, even though they had been purified by Fengwu's pure sword, they were still unable to reincarnate. Hearing Ming Shi's request, the father and son immediately agreed without thinking. The father and son led Ming Shi and the others to the cave they accidentally discovered. They went into the cave and led the way to find the box. The father and son walked at the front, followed by Fengwu and Ming Shi. Ming Shi was afraid that Fengwu would be in danger, so he held Fengwu's hand and carefully protected her. Skycliff protected Ming Shi from behind. His responsibility was to protect Ming Shi, so he could not be too far away from Ming Shi. This passage was very narrow, only allowing one person to pass through sideways. Ming Shi and the others could only pass through sideways. The island was clearly filled with black fog, but there was no black fog in this place. The air was unbelievably clean. This was probably why Madame Normand sent Qing Jing to search the island, but they were unable to find the source of the black fog. When searching, everyone would take it for granted that the source of the black fog was the thickest place. Who would have thought that the place without any black fog was the real source? Fengwu and the others walked for a long time before reaching the end. At the end of the passage, there was a very gorgeous-looking box, and the lid of the box was closed. From the gap in the box, they could see black fog constantly seeping out. The black fog did not rise into the sky, but instead seeped into the ground and disappeared. This strange sight made everyone frown. What do we do now? Why don't we reseal it? No one suggested to open the box. It was already scary enough that the box was only half closed. If they really opened it, who knew what kind of ghost would come out? Although it was unsealed, it was useless. The box had lost its seal, and whatever was inside could come out at any time. To the thing inside the box, there was no difference whether the lid was closed or not. "I'll seal it," Ming Shi said. As he spoke, he bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood. Then, he formed a complicated hand seal with both hands. As the crown prince of the Silvermoon ancient nation, Ming Shi had inherited the sealing enchantment power of the Moon Monarch. When it came to sealing techniques, no one could compare to the Silvermoon ancient nation. Aside from Ming Shi, the others stepped back and waited for Ming Shi to complete the seal. Sky Edge and Fengwu stood behind Ming Shi, too. They did not disturb him. They did not know what was inside the box. At this time, there was no movement at all. Was it not going to attack and stop the seal? No one thought so, but no one guessed that the thing inside the box was only an arm. No matter how powerful the arm was, it could not have its own consciousness. While everyone was anxiously waiting for the result, a mysterious person covered in black fog suddenly appeared from the ground. This mysterious person was surrounded by black fog, and even his eyes were not exposed. They could barely make out a figure. Ming Shi and the others felt as if they were facing a great enemy. This mysterious person gave them a very strong feeling. Just the pressure alone was enough to make many people fall to the ground. Although some people didn't fall to the ground, their faces were pale and they were in pain. Traces of blood flowed from their mouths. It was obvious that they weren't having a good time. Fengwu and Skycliff did not fall to the ground. Skycliff's mouth was bleeding. Obviously, he had internal injuries. Fengwu did not feel anything. The pure sword was a divine weapon, so it automatically protected its master. So, among the people here, Fengwu girl was definitely the most relaxed. Even Ming Shi, who had God's blood, could not help but turn pale. Ming Shi and the others thought that this mysterious person would attack them. They did not expect that he just waved his hand and took away the box used for the seal. Then, he disappeared from the ground. What? What's wrong with this person? Jerfman blinked in disbelief. He thought he was dead for sure. He did not expect to be so lucky to survive. I don't know. Let's get out of here first, Ming Shi said. Of course, the others did not have any objections. The group immediately left the cave by the way they came. After leaving the cave, everyone found that the father and son pair had disappeared. No one cared where they went. Whether they wanted to stay or reincarnate had nothing to do with them. Jerfman thought that he was very cultured not to find a necromancer to destroy them. Without the pollution source, Fengwu used Xiaochun's power to evolve the entire island. The mutated magical beasts and plants that had been eroded returned to their original appearance. But after the mutation, although the humans recovered, they could no longer live. Their bodies were still too weak. They didn't have a strong vitality compared to magic beasts and plants. When the black fog corroded their bodies, they had already died. Chapter 594. Without the source of pollution, Fengwu used Xiaochun's power to evolve the entire island. The corroded mutated magic beasts and plants returned to their original state. But after the mutation, although the humans recovered, they could no longer live. Their bodies were still too weak. They didn't have a strong vitality compared to magic beasts and plants. When the black mist corroded their bodies, they had already died. Under Fengwu's purification, the coral island was completely restored to its original state. At this time, Zicheng's black shadow had returned to his ship without anyone noticing. You got it? Zicheng asked, not surprised. Yes. The demon ancestor's mood was obviously very good. It seems that this trip went very smoothly. Zicheng smiled gently. He had never doubted the demon ancestor's strength. Now that he had lost his physical body, he could only display a third of his original strength. I met two very interesting fellows on this trip. One seems to be a descendant of the four great emperors, and the other is very special. Irene and Feng Juntian were about to think of a way to reach the island through the teleportation formation when a series of changes suddenly occurred on the distant coral island. The black fog that originally surrounded the island disappeared, and the mutated plants also disappeared, returning to their original state. The black seawater around the island also disappeared, and the seawater became blue again. When Feng Juntian brought Irene to the coral island, he saw that his sister Fengwu was also on the island. After that, the siblings, who had not seen each other for a long time, naturally sat together and chatted for a while. Irene was shocked to see Fengwu, who had not died in the Blue Moon world, appear alive in front of her. She never thought that Fengwu could come out of the Blue Moon world alive. The Blue Moon Duke was the second big boss in the book after the demon ancestor. This boss was not easy to kill, and the Blue Moon world was a world of its own. The only one who could escape from the Blue Moon world was the female lead who was cursed by the world's luck. If she had not hitched a ride with the female lead, she would not have been able to escape from that place. Fengwu didn't have the protagonist's aura, nor did she get a free ride. How did she escape? Irene was puzzled. She decided that when Fengwu was free, she would definitely ask Fengwu if anything else happened after she and Zicheng escaped. The matter of Coral Island had been resolved. As for what was inside the missing box, even Madame Noramanda, the island master, had no idea. No one knew what was sealed in the box. In any case, no one had the confidence to snatch the box back from the mysterious man. The most important thing was that they didn't even know who the mysterious person was. Even if they wanted to rob him, they couldn't find a place to do so. Noramanda didn't care about the box. As long as Coral Island could be restored to its former state, she would be very satisfied. After Fengwu and Mingxi resolved the matter of Coral Island, the two decided to return to the academy. Irene was among them. Irene also had the idea of returning to the academy. Furthermore, she had not returned as soon as possible because her injuries had not fully healed. Furthermore, she was worried that her savior, Feng Juntian, would die on the island. Therefore, she did not immediately return to the academy and instead came to Coral Island. Before returning, Noramanda and her children entertained Mingxi and the others. Feng Juntian felt that he did not help much and was embarrassed to stay on the island and accept their hospitality. However, when he thought of his sister, he did not want to leave so quickly. Therefore, he thickened his face and stayed. Before staying, he sent a letter back to the Star Hall and reported everything that happened on Coral Island to the higher-ups of the Star Hall. How the higher-ups would react was not something he should be concerned about. He just wanted to use these few days to accompany his sister. To be able to see her brother on Coral Island, the Fengwu girl was very happy. For the past 2 days, she went into the water with her brother every day to catch fish and crabs. Fengwu had already ravaged all the species of fish on the island. Not only did she eat until her belly was round, but she also packed Coral Island specialty seafood. Feng Juntian was one of the Star Hall's star generals. He could not stay on the island to play for too long. After playing with his sister for 3 days, he had to return to the Star Hall to report. Fengwu and Mingxi also set off on the same day as Feng Juntian. They chose to take a boat back to the central city. They could also enjoy the scenery on the sea. Fengwu did not know that her precious son had been missing for several days. Now, the entire academy was frantically searching for her son. The leisurely Fengwu girl fished and ate fish on the boat every day. Her days were very comfortable. After Irene found a chance to see the Fengwu girl alone, she finally found out the truth about how the Fengwu girl left the Blue Moon world. After finding out that it was Mingxi who ran to the Blue Moon world to save her, Irene was somewhat envious. Speaking of which, whether it was Fengwu or Zicheng, they were both transmigrated girls like her. As the female lead, Zicheng had endless suitors. She also had an outstanding male lead who took care of her in every way possible. Although Fengwu was not the female lead, she had captivated the future Moon Emperor. Just this achievement alone was much better than the female lead. There was also that reincarnated Xiazhua. She heard that he also had a girl he liked. Moreover, it was someone he liked from his previous life to this life. It seemed that she was the only single dog. This fact made her feel helpless. She took out a small mirror from her bosom and looked at herself. Impossible. She was clearly not bad looking. Why didn't she have a single suitor? This was illogical. As a single dog, Irene felt like she had suffered 10,000 points of damage. After returning to the academy with great difficulty, Irene wanted to go out and eat something good to comfort her wounded heart. She didn't expect to hear the big news as soon as she arrived at the academy. Fengwu's son had actually been kidnapped. And who was the person who kidnapped Feng Yi? Even after so long, they still hadn't found out. Fengwu knew that something had happened to Xiao Yi and was very anxious. She immediately wanted to go out and look for him. However, after seeing the note that Xiao Yi had left behind, she was no longer anxious. She calmly sat down and ate and drank. Her reaction was too abnormal. Ajur and the others were worried that the Fengwu girl was too traumatized and couldn't take it anymore. Xiao Wu, are you okay? Mo Gui carefully looked at the Fengwu girl who was gnawing on a chicken drumstick. Xiao Wu, you don't have to worry too much. Xiao Yi will definitely come back safely, Silda hurriedly said. That's right, Xiao Wu. You have to believe in everyone. With so many of us helping, Xiao Yi will definitely come back, Annika said with an expression of absolute trust. Rika looked at the mess and her heart tightened. Seeing Wu like this, she didn't say anything bad, which was rare for her. She sat alone and drank fruit tea. I believe that Xiao Yi will come back. He wrote a letter, didn't he? Fengwu said with a straight face after gnawing on a chicken drumstick. It couldn't be. She actually believed the words written by that little fellow who wasn't even 2 years old. He was such a young child. How could she believe his words? Everyone fell silent. Ha ha ha. They suddenly didn't know whether to tell her not to be so careless or not to worry too much. Both choices made them feel conflicted. What should they do? In less than 2 days after Fengwu's return, a bunch of seniors who had carried Xiao Yi before came looking for her. They comforted her in all sorts of ways and promised that they would definitely find Xiao Yi. They wouldn't give up until they found Xiao Yi. How dare they kidnap their Notre Dame du Starlight's mascot? They must have a death wish. What the hell was a mascot? On the 3rd day after Fengwu's return, she received a letter. She didn't know where it came from, but her name was written on the envelope. When the old guard handed the letter to Fengwu, Fengwu didn't know who would write her a letter. After opening the letter, the answer was finally revealed. This letter was actually written by the person who kidnapped Feng Yi. It said that if she wanted to bring Feng Yi back, she had to go to Sin City alone. If they found out that she had brought someone else with her, the person who kidnapped Feng Yi would immediately kill the hostage. Fengwu thought for a few seconds, but still decided to go to Sin City to bring Xiao Yi back. It was best for children not to play outside for too long. Master also said that good children must come home on time. Where was the city of Sin? It was a paradise for the evildoers of the entire continent. There were no laws or restraints there. There was only the creed that only the strong were respected. In every big city, there were laws that prohibited magic and martial arts. Killing people in the city was also a serious crime. However, it was different in Sin City. There were no restrictions there. If you wanted to kill someone in the city, no one would stop you. As long as you were strong enough, you could kill whoever you wanted. In Sin City, there were all sorts of crimes happening every day. Stealing, robbing, and kidnapping were just a small matter. It was normal for people to kill each other. There was their own set of rules. If an outsider came to Sin City, there would be nothing left of them. In many cities, criminals who had committed serious crimes but were not sentenced to death would be sent to the city of Sin. These criminals were not allowed to leave the city. They were like everyone else. Whether they could survive or not depended on their strength and luck. In Sin City, the darkness of human nature was magnified to the extreme. Even children of a few years old had learned the unique way of survival. Although these children were young, they wouldn't lose to any adults if they were to be ruthless. In short, Sin City was an extremely dangerous place. For people who weren't strong enough, this place could be classified as an S-grade danger. The Fengwu girl was going to enter such a city alone. Before going to Sin City, Fengwu called back her irresponsible contract spirit, Liddy, and Bao Bao, who ran back to the spiritual world and disappeared. These two were definitely the most carefree contract spirits and beasts. They wandered around all day and hadn't been taught a lesson by their master. After finding 2 helpers and taking care of Xiaochun, the Fengwu girl left a letter saying that she was going to pick up Bao Bao. Then, there was no then. After leaving the school, Bao Bao suggested that Fengwu go to the Adventurers Guild to ask about Sin City. Many adventurers turned their attention to Fengwu, who was such a cute little girl, asking about Sin City. Some even advised Fengwu not to take things too hard. Once a cute little girl like her entered Sin City, she wouldn't even be left with a single scrap. Chapter 595. She found 2 helpers and took care of Xiaochun. The Fengwu girl left a letter saying that she was going to pick Bao Bao up. Then, there was nothing else. After leaving the school, Bao Bao suggested that Fengwu go to the Adventurers Guild to ask about the city of Sin. Many adventurers turned their attention to Fengwu, who was such a cute little girl, asking about Sin City. Some even advised Fengwu not to take things too hard. Once a cute little girl like her entered Sin City, she wouldn't even be left with a single scrap. Fengwu sincerely thanked the others for their kind advice. Then, she decided to go to Sin City to pick up Xiao Yi and Little Bun. The city of Sin was a criminal's paradise. There wasn't even a teleportation array in the city. How could there be a teleportation array in a place filled with criminals? If anyone dared to step out of the teleportation array, they would be torn apart by the vicious criminals guarding the teleportation array in the next second. Without a teleportation circle to the city of Sin, the Fengwu girl could only take the teleportation circle to the nearest teleportation circle to the city of Sin. After arriving there, she bought a ticket and boarded the flying beast carriage. She took the flying beast carriage to a small city near the city of Sin. A small city like this didn't have a teleportation circle. If she wanted to go far, she had to go to the relay station and take the flying beast carriage. On the flying beast carriage, there were all kinds of people. Fengwu had money on her, so she asked for a single room. She didn't sleep on the shared bed. Some people on the carriage saw that Fengwu was alone and dressed well. They wanted to hit on her. Those who didn't have eyes were all taught a lesson by Fengwu. Now, they all took a detour when they saw Fengwu. They didn't have the arrogance they had when they boarded the beast carriage. The smart Bao Bao and Liddy weren't worried about their little master's safety after knowing that he was kidnapped. Bao Bao guessed Feng Ye's identity. No matter who kidnapped Feng Ye, he didn't think that anyone could kill Feng Ye, the reincarnation of the Elf King. Although Liddy wasn't sure of Feng Ye's identity, she could already feel that her little master wasn't an ordinary person. Staying by his side would be very beneficial for her cultivation. Liddy expressed her deep condemnation and anger towards the bad guy who kidnapped her little master. After a long discussion, the spiritual creature and the beast agreed that the kidnapper was someone who hated Fengwu very much. These 2 people had been missing for a long time and had no contact with Hua Jin, but they still knew who he was. He wanted to kidnap Xiao Yi and send him out of the city quietly. He was also capable of sending the child to a place like Sin City and even setting a trap there. No matter how they looked at it, among all of Fengwu's enemies, there was no one else who could do this besides Hua Jin. Eve wanted to kill Fengwu all day long. Unfortunately, she didn't have the strength and influence to do so. Although Rika hated Fengwu, based on their understanding of her, she wasn't a woman who would lay her hands on a child. These 2 people couldn't be related to Sin City. Therefore, after much thought, the only suspect they could think of was Hua Jin. However, even though Hua Jin was rich and powerful, it seemed impossible for her to have any connections with Sin City. Hua Jin was bent on becoming the Moon Empress, so it was impossible for her to take the initiative to provoke someone from Sin City. If news of him colluding with Sin City was exposed, how could he become the future Moon Empress of Silvermoon Ancient Kingdom? Therefore, although Hua Jin was the most suspicious, there was a possibility that she wasn't the culprit. After much thought, Hua Jin was still the most suspicious. Let's not think about it anymore and focus on the most suspicious person first. Hence, the spirit and beast irresponsibly listed Hua Jin as the most likely suspect. Hua Jin still didn't know that he had been irresponsibly targeted so easily. So, it's Hua Jin. It must be Hua Jin. Liddy grabbed Fenwu's arm agitatedly. She's the most suspicious, said Baby. Why did she kidnap Xiaoyi? Fenwu asked, unable to figure it out. To lure you out, of course. This was the explanation Baby came up with. We clearly see each other often. Why did she use such a method to meet me? Fenwu was even more puzzled. What a strange person. We clearly see each other every day. Why did she use Xiaoyi to lure me out? The Fenwu girl wondered, perplexed. She must have lured you out to kill you. You two see each other every day in school, but she can't possibly kill you in front of so many classmates. How can she kill you if she doesn't lure you somewhere else? Baby rolled his eyes in exasperation. It had been some time since they last met, but the Fenwu girl had not improved at all. Kill me? Fenwu thought for a moment. I don't think I've offended Hua Jin. Baby could not help but roll his eyes. He explained in detail how Hua Jin liked Ming Shi and how he wanted to be the Moon Empress. The Fenwu girl finally got the hang of it. She wants to kill me just because Ming Shi doesn't like her. Fenwu pursed her lips. Something like that. Baby and Liddy nodded in unison. The three of them discussed Hua Jin's issue all the way until the flying beast car arrived at the terminal. After alighting from the flying beast car, the Fenwu girl bought a horse and rode it towards Sin City with a map in hand. The Fenwu girl did not know that when she first set off for Sin City, Ming Shi and the rest had seen Fenwu's message and were looking for her everywhere. They had heard from the guard at the gate that someone had sent a letter to Fenwu. Only then did they think that Fenwu might have received news from the mastermind and left in a hurry. However, no one could guess where Fenwu had gone, so they could only ask around in the city. Fortunately, Ajur was lucky enough to meet the Tingfeng and Tingyu siblings. When the siblings heard that Fenwu was missing, they provided him with useful information. Before Fenwu left, she had asked around about Sin City. What kind of place was Sin City? Was that a place where a good girl would go? Ming Shi and the rest were anxious. Ming Shi immediately chased after Hua Jin with Skycliff. Ajur and Mo Gui also applied for leave and chased after them. Silda and the rest also wanted to help, but Ming Shi politely rejected them. Sin City was not a place where girls should set foot in. It was extremely inconvenient to bring them there. It was very likely that they would get into a conflict with others to protect Fenwu before they could find her. This would be extremely disadvantageous for their rescue mission. Silda and the rest knew that they would be a burden if they went, so they did not insist on going. They reluctantly stayed behind to wait for news. Although Ming Shi and Ajur gave chase as fast as they could, they were still slower than Fenwu and did not get into the same flying beast car as Fenwu. Chapter 597. Just as the boss was about to push the door open, a few more people popped out from the side. It's not a good habit to eat alone. Motherfucker, when did you guys get here? The boss was shocked and cursed in his heart. We came a little later than you. The newcomers laughed coldly. Why are you guys here? Did those guys call you guys over as well? The boss asked suspiciously. Just like you, we're here because we're paid. Since everyone's mission is the same, why don't we work together? Once we're in the room, we'll go up one by one. Since they were all here for the same mission, there was no other way. They didn't know who this woman offended to find so many men to toy with her. However, this had nothing to do with them. How could anyone who could live in the city of sin and develop their own power be compassionate and kind? After discussing, the few men walked into Fenwu's room. Within 15 minutes, there were 7 men lying around in Fenwu's room. All of them had their third leg broken. The Fenwu girl didn't hold back at all. Her master had said that if she encountered bad people who wanted to take advantage of her, she should directly break their manhood. When Fenwu attacked, she was fast and ruthless. These men didn't even have a chance to react before they were turned into eunuchs by Fengwu. When these men woke up from the intense pain, they saw a little magical beast with an eggshell on its head floating in the space in front of them. This little magical beast was very cute, but it looked at them with a hint of schadenfreude. "Tell me, who sent you here?" Bao Bao saw that these men had woken up and flew in front of them, asking without holding back. The men looked at each other and didn't say anything. They were also people with some power in the city. If they confessed everything, how could they survive in the city in the future? Bao Bao sneered. "If you don't say anything, then we don't need to keep you alive." After saying that, he gave the Fengwu girl a look. The Fengwu girl nodded and walked over with a dagger in her hand. There was not a trace of hesitation in her calm eyes, which made these people feel uneasy. Was this girl really the same as the information given by those people? Was she just an ordinary student? And a second-year student at that? No matter how he looked at it, she was a veteran who killed people like flies. Looking at her calm eyes and her sword-wielding hand, it was so steady that it did not tremble at all. This meant that this was not the first time she had killed someone. Perhaps the number of people she had killed was no less than theirs. If they had known that they were going to deal with this kind of little pervert, they wouldn't have accepted the mission just for some benefits. These people cursed the person who hired them and gave them the wrong information in their hearts. Don't. We'll talk. We came here because we accepted the mission. We really don't know who gave us the mission. The leader who first stood outside Fengwu's door immediately told them everything he knew. He had killed countless people, but it didn't mean that he wanted to become a dead man. Although they might not let him go if he told them, if he didn't, he would definitely die. You guys too. Bao Bao turned his gaze to the others and signaled Fengwu not to make a move first and to observe first. Fengwu stood behind Bao Bao with her dagger. She did not make any moves to attack, which made these people sigh in relief. The others immediately nodded, afraid that the person and beast in front of them would kill them if they were too slow. What's the mission content? Bao Bao asked again. These people did not dare to hide anything and obediently told Fengwu and Bao Bao everything they knew. It turned out that in the city of Sin, there was a black market. Somewhere in the black market, it was a place where missions were given and accepted. These people in the black market accepted the mission to destroy Fengwu's innocence without harming her life. There were all kinds of strange missions in the black market. The people who accepted this mission did not care. After all, the mission was simple and there were benefits to be gained. Hence, some people who were interested in this mission accepted it. Usually, a simple mission with good rewards like this would not be accepted by small people. The few people who accepted this mission were not ordinary people. They were considered to be people of status in the black market. Some people wanted to accept it, but their status was not high enough. They were not qualified to compete with these people. If they had known that they were not going to face a little sheep who had not graduated from school, but a legendary monster wearing sheepskin, they would not have rushed in without bringing others. They had thought that the main purpose of coming to this room was to have sex with a woman. They had not expected that they would become prisoners and even have their manhood broken. If they could leave this place alive, just the money needed to treat their manhood would not be a small amount. This business was simply too bad. After Bao Bao asked everything he wanted to know, the Fengwu girl raised her sword and walked over. Although there was no murderous intent in her eyes, her action said everything. You didn't keep your word. You said that you would not kill us after we told you everything. These people shouted like crazy. Hey, don't talk nonsense like that. When did Bao Bao say that I would spare your lives if you were serious? Bao Bao won't take the blame for this. Bao Bao impolitely glared at these people. These people thought for a while, and it seemed to be the case. Oh, this strange little magical beast and that strange girl who didn't speak actually didn't say anything like not killing them. These words were just made up in their minds. Fengwu used her dagger to stab a hole in each of their hearts, sending these bad guys to hell. Feng Wu would never be merciful to such bad people. Her master had said that letting these bad people go would only harm more people. Therefore, when she encountered these bad people, she should kill them if she could. She must not give them another chance to commit crimes. The Feng Wu girl was an obedient girl, especially when it came to her master's words. As long as it was her master's words, she would remember them in her heart and review them from time to time. After killing these people, Feng Wu also dealt with the small fries guarding outside. Fortunately, these people thought that they had entered the room to play with women, so they didn't want to make too much noise. They even put up a soundproof enchantment, which created an opportunity for the Feng Wu girl. They couldn't even call for help and just hung in the Feng Wu girl's room. Before they died, they even became eunuchs in the heavenly wind continent. After dealing with all the enemies, the Feng Wu girl destroyed the corpses. It was not to destroy the corpses. Yesterday, these people had made a lot of noise when they entered her room. It was impossible to hide it. Destroying the corpses was impossible. The reason why the corpses were destroyed was because the Feng Wu girl and Bao Bao felt that the corpses were too ugly to be placed here. After the corpses were dealt with, this room naturally could not be stayed any longer. In the middle of the night, Feng Wu ran to the front desk to change to another room. Seeing her come down from the room, the staff at the front desk looked at her differently. Chapter 598. Feng Wu knew how hard it was to find a little bun in the city of Sin. She had stayed in the inn for a few days, but she hadn't even seen a shadow of the little bun. She hadn't even heard of him. Bao Bao had been wondering where the little bun was hidden. They were here to save the little bun, so they couldn't leave empty-handed. After they had stayed in the inn for 3 days, someone sent her a letter, telling her to go to the black market. Feng Wu obediently went and even drank the wine that was prepared for her in one of the restaurants in the black market. Not long after Feng Wu drank the wine, a few wretched-looking men walked in. These men took off their clothes as they walked in. They were all laughing, and it was obvious that they were thinking of something dirty. Bao Bao thought that Feng Wu had obediently drank the medicine and wouldn't have a chance to fight back. He didn't think that the person who looked so weak before would be able to stand up. She even turned into a killing god and killed most of the men who came in, leaving only 1 or 2 to ask questions. After those people answered Bao Bao's questions, Feng Wu sent the remaining 2 on their way with a sword. She walked out of the black market restaurant in one piece. Xiao Wu, we can't go on like this. The person who kidnapped Xiao Yi doesn't seem to want to give him back to you. Not only that, she wants to use him to destroy you. If you didn't have a pure sword to protect you and not be afraid of any poison, no matter how strong you are, you would have died in that person's hands. Bao Bao's face was a little ugly. No one would be happy if they were led by the nose. But where would they put Xiao Yi? Liddy stroked her chin as she racked her brains with a headache. That's a good question. The city of Sin is so big. It's not easy to find a child. We have to think of another way. Bao Bao said. Perhaps it was because they had failed twice in scheming against Feng Wu. They didn't know what would happen next time, so Feng Wu and the others decided to ask around for information about the little bun. Even though they didn't get any information about steamed bun, they did hear something important. In Sin City, there was a Lord Yuli's who was collecting babies. It was said that this Lord Yuri's had been injured in a fight. Ordinary methods could not heal such injuries, so he planned to use forbidden magic. He directly sacrificed the flesh and blood of 100 little babies to restore his body to its peak. Sacrificing 100 babies wouldn't be difficult in other cities. However, in the city of Sin, it wasn't easy for babies to survive. Hence, the number of babies alive was very good. At most, there were 20 of them. It was impossible to gather 100 babies. In order to heal his injuries, Ulysses posted on the black market that he was collecting babies. The reward for this mission was average because it was just catching a baby. There wasn't much difficulty, but there were many people who accepted it. Similarly, it was also because the mission wasn't that difficult and there was money to be made. Such simple missions were always welcomed by some of the black market mission takers with average strength. A pervert who collected babies. This person was very suspicious. Could it be that Xiao Yi was in his hands? If they wanted to prove this conjecture, they had to go to Ulysses' house and take a look at the captured babies. They did it immediately. However, it would be too conspicuous if they went there. Who knew how many people in the city were secretly watching Fengwu? Perhaps as soon as she approached Lord Ulysses' house, someone would come out and kill her. In the end, they decided to let the little undead, Liddy, do it. After Liddy accepted the mission, she obediently ran to Ulysses' house. She only returned after a few hours. "How is it?" Bao Bao immediately asked when he saw Liddy return. "He's here. Xiao Yi is really at Ulysses' house, but he looks." Liddy had a troubled expression. She didn't know what to say. Could it be that Xiao Yi was hurt and abused? Bao Bao roared in disbelief. That was impossible. With Bao Bao's identity as the reincarnation of the Elf King and his hidden abilities, it was impossible for him to be caught so easily. Fengwu also looked at Liddy with a poker face. Although she didn't think that anything would happen to her little bun, as a mother, the Fengwu girl was still instinctively worried about her own child. When Liddy saw that they were so worried, she immediately shook her head. "No, no, in fact, it's the opposite. I saw that Xiao Yi was doing well at Ulysses' place. Not only was he provided with good food and drinks, but Ulysses also treated Xiao Yi like a treasure. Usually, he would ask for the stars and not the moon. He was treated better than all the babies combined. But I always felt that Ulysses' attitude was a bit strange. The way he looked at Xiao Yi was very abnormal." This was the latest information that Liddy had obtained after sneaking into Ulysses' house. Ulysses' attitude toward Xiao Yi at that time was absolutely too good. Those who didn't know better would think that he was Xiao Ye's father. Especially the way he looked at Xiao Yi, so excited and crazy. It was a gaze that could give one nightmares. After asking what had happened, Fengwu decided to find an opportunity to go to Ulysses' house to check on Xiao Ye's situation. At this time, Liddy spoke again. "There's one more thing that I forgot to mention. I saw Ming Shi, Ajur, and Mo Gui. The three of them have also come to Nifa's city and are asking about you." This was an unexpected discovery by Liddy. After Fengwu and the other two came to Nifa's city, they had been cooped up in their rooms and rarely went out. So they didn't know that Ming Shi and the others had already come the day after they entered the city. After arriving, they had been asking about Fengwu girl. It was probably because they didn't know if the Fengwu girl was a powerful opponent, so no one dared to tell them about Fengwu's whereabouts. Fengwu had also been cooped up in her room every day, so Ming Shi couldn't find anything even after searching for many days. "You're saying that Ming Shi and the others are also here?" Bao Bao and Fengwu's eyes lit up at the same time. "That's great. This is much easier. Go and find Ming Shi immediately and ask them to find a way to sneak into Ulysses' place and bring Xiao Yi back." Bao Bao excitedly flew in front of Liddy. There was no other way. There were too many people watching Xiao Wu. They couldn't make a move even if they wanted to. If they weren't careful, they would be caught by those people outside. It was different for Ming Shi and the others. Even if there were people who had designs on them, there wouldn't be many people who would dare to do so after they had shown their strength. There wouldn't be anyone watching them for no reason. Hence, it was best to let Ming Shi and the others go. In order to let Ming Shi and the others know what to do, Bao Bao specially asked Fengwu to write a letter and asked Liddy to pass it to Ming Shi and the others. Ming Shi and the others had been in the city of Sin for many days, but they couldn't find any news about Fengwu. The only thing they could be sure of was that Fengwu had indeed entered the city of Sin a few days ago. As for where she went after she entered, there wasn't any news about her. Ming Shi and the others were very anxious. As the days went by, there was still no news about Fengwu. Every day, they wondered if something had happened to Fengwu. She was so innocent. What if she was deceived and hurt by someone? Thinking of this, Ming Shi was very worried. "Come and see, this is a letter from Xiao Wu." A Jur suddenly waved the letter in his hand and shouted. Ming Shi and Mo Gui immediately gathered around. Whether it was the handwriting or the tone of the letter, it was exactly the same as Fengwu's. They could be sure that this letter was indeed written by the Fengwu girl. But the question was, why didn't Fengwu come to find them when she knew they were here? Instead, she sent such a letter to tell them what to do. Could it be that this letter was sent by Lydie? Why didn't she show herself and let us see her? Mo Gui scratched his head in confusion. It should be because of the spirit-purifying array in the city. Ming Shi had long discovered that this city of sin had a special array set up by a powerful person to deal with the undead. As long as someone died in the city of sin, they would be forcibly purified and sent away by this array. So in the city of sin, there were no souls. Even if a soul appeared occasionally, it could only exist for about a quarter of an hour before being purified by the array. Chapter 599. It should be because of the spirit-purifying array in the city. Ming Shi had long discovered that this city of sin had been set up by an almighty to deal with spirits of the dead. As long as someone died in the city of sin, they would be forcefully purified by this array and sent away. Hence, there were no spirits in the city of sin. Even if spirits appeared occasionally, they could only exist for about 15 minutes before being purified by the array. After the purified spirits, no matter how vicious and evil they were when they were alive, they would be sent to where they should go. As for Lydie, she could only appear in the city of sin because she had signed a contract with Fengwu. Even so, her abilities had been greatly reduced. At the very least, it was impossible for the current Lydie to appear in front of others. The fact that the city lord of the city of sin had set up such a large array made the spirits of the dead like Lydie feel extremely stifled. The spirit-purifying array. The city of sin actually has such an array. Could it be that these evil people are afraid of spirits? Mo Gui snorted. He really couldn't imagine that these evil people living here would be afraid of spirits. From what I know, this spirit-purifying array was set up by the city lord of the city of sin, who found a necromancer he was on good terms with, because there are people dying in the city of sin every day. The city lord said that he didn't want his city to have more spirits than people, so he set up this array to send the spirits of the dead directly to where they should go. They don't have to stay in the city of sin. Ming Shi shared some of the rumors he had heard. The city lord of the city of sin was said to be a warlock saint. If it wasn't for the warlock saint overseeing the city would have been destroyed long ago. Ming Shi and the others didn't gossip too much about the city lord. Instead, they were curious about Yuri's, who was mentioned in Fengwu's letter. This Yuri's actually thought of using a baby to treat his injuries. It was obvious that he wasn't a good person. In a place like the city of sin, he might even be one of the biggest bad guys. For such a bad guy to pamper Xiaoyi so much, no matter how one thought about it, there was something wrong. As for Yuri's attitude toward Xiaoyi, it was Bao Bao who asked Fengwu to add in. Fengwu girl was never a girl who would exaggerate things, so she only wrote down what Lydie saw and did not add any personal opinions. Knowing that Xiaoyi was with Yuri's, they naturally had to bring the child back. Once they found Xiaoyi, they could bring Fengwu back to school. In the city of sin, it was either fighting or killing all day long. From the calm faces of the people on the streets, Ming Shi and the rest could easily guess that this kind of drama was being played out every day. Fortunately, although the security in the city of sin wasn't very good, and there were always people thinking of ways to kill people on the streets, the cleanliness of the streets was still pretty good. It was said that this was because the city lord was a clean freak. He couldn't bear to see his city in a mess, so no matter if it was a fight or a murder, as long as someone dirted the streets, he would definitely clean up the dirty area. The streets were so clean that there wasn't even a litter of fruit peels. Even if someone accidentally spat on the streets, after spitting, they would clean up the area they spat on without leaving any traces. Clean streets and evil people who cared about hygiene. This was the only good thing about the city of Sin. After finding out where Xiao Yi was, Ming Shi, Ajur, and the rest sneaked into Yuri's house that night. Yuri's was a famous person in the city of Sin. He was very strong and ruthless. He was used to torturing his opponents until they were unrecognizable before sending them on their way. Most of the people in the city of Sin didn't dare to talk too much about this big pervert. Those who dared to gossip about him were only a few people who were as strong as Yuri's or were stronger than him. The house that Yuri's lived in was considered a luxurious house in the city of Sin. Not only was it spacious, but it was also very luxurious. In the city of Sin, as long as you were ruthless enough and had enough strength, you didn't have to be afraid of living a poor life. Yuri's was undoubtedly one of the group of people who had a good life. He was ruthless enough and strong enough. It was very normal for him to own such a big house. Ming Shi and the rest spent some money to inquire about Yuri's. When the person who sold the information saw that they were only asking about things that everyone in the city of Sin knew, he straightforwardly told Ming Shi everything he knew. Ming Shi and the rest found out from the person who sold the information that Yuri's was a criminal who had been sent to the city of Sin from outside. He had killed many people in the city he was in and had been discovered by the law enforcement team. Yuri's family had a big business in the area. Hence, he spent some money to have the death sentence changed to exile in the city of Sin. This time, Yuri's had found a good place. There were no laws in the city. If you wanted to kill, you could kill. If you wanted to hurt, you could hurt. As long as you were stronger than others, no one would dare to stop you. In the city of Sin, Yuri's had done countless things of abuse. This guy seemed to have a hobby of torturing people. The more he tortured people, the more pleasure he got. He was simply a psychopath. Knowing that this was a psychopath, Ming Shi and the rest didn't dare to let their guard down. After entering Yuri's house, they split up to look for Xiao Yi. Where was little Yi? He was now in Yuri's room. He didn't want to see this perverted little bun at all. That day, after he was taken away from Central City by the fake couple, they sent him to the city of Sin and sold him to this psychopath, Yuri's. This guy laughed disgustingly the moment he saw him and even liked to hug him. Little Bun expressed that he didn't like being hugged by a bad guy he didn't know. He even kicked Yuri's twice. Yuri's wasn't angry at all. If other people saw such a strange reaction, their jaws would drop. Yuri's doted on Little Yi, but Little Yi felt goosebumps all over his body. "Mommy, there's a bad guy here who wants to kidnap your son." Little Bun was afraid that Yuri's had bad intentions towards him. He wasn't an ordinary bun. Yuri's had to be careful if he wanted to do anything to him. Little Yi waved his little fist proudly in his heart. "Little thing, you're really the most vigorous existence I've ever seen. Although I don't know where those two idiots got you from, I really have to thank them for sending you to my side. With you, there's no need for those other trash to exist." It started again. Little Yi couldn't help but roll his eyes in his heart. This psychopath loved to watch him say strange things. No one was responding to him, but the more he talked, the less excited he became. "There's a psychopath here with Mommy." Little Bun was considering whether he should end his trip and go home. Little Yi expressed that he didn't want to stay with this psychopath at all. But when he was on the ship, he heard that those who wanted to bully Mommy would lure Mommy here. Should he stay here and wait for Mommy to pick him up, or should he let Little White carry him back? This was a difficult choice. Today, this psychopath was a little strange. After talking to him, he didn't go to sleep immediately. Instead, he walked him to a mysterious altar in the backyard. After walking to the altar, he placed Little Bun in the center of the altar. Then, he muttered something, and his eyes revealed an unconcealable excitement. Although this psychopath always looked excited when he looked at him, he was especially excited tonight. He was so excited that he was a little crazy. This guy couldn't be so excited that he really went crazy, right? Little Yi thought to himself helplessly. Reality proved that this little guy was thinking too much. As a bad guy with a strong heart, Yuri's wouldn't go crazy so easily. As a villain, most of his heart's endurance was pretty good. Chapter 600. Although this lunatic had always been excited when he looked at him, he was especially excited tonight. He was so excited that he seemed to have gone crazy. This guy couldn't be so excited that he really went crazy, right? Xiao Yi thought to himself helplessly. Reality proved that this little guy was thinking too much. As a bad guy with a strong heart, Yuri's wouldn't go crazy so easily. As a villain, most of them had a strong heart. After his excitement, Yuri's began to chant at the altar. The entire altar suddenly became a little eerie and terrifying. It'll be over soon. I'll be reborn very soon. As long as I absorb the thick life force in your body, not only will my injuries be healed, even my strength and lifespan will increase. You're really a treasure. You're the best treasure that the heavens have given me, Yuri's. This lunatic must have a cat biscuit in his brain. Xiao Yi wrapped him up and appraised him. At this moment, not far from Yuri's, Ming Shi and the rest were also slowly approaching the altar. Ming Shi was just about to go upstairs to check when he saw Yuri's bringing Little Bun down. Ming Shi didn't dare to follow too closely and could only follow from a distance. He wanted to see what Yuri's wanted to do. When he found out that this guy actually wanted to sacrifice Little Yi to obtain life force and lifespan, he couldn't tolerate it. Such a cruel method was clearly beyond the limits of Ming Shi's tolerance. Ming Shi unsheathed his long sword and suddenly attacked Yuri's with a Jur and the other two, who had come to meet up with him. A magic array suddenly appeared behind Yuri's to protect him, causing Ming Shi and the rest sneak attack to fail. So 3 rats sneaked in. Don't worry. Wait for me to complete this sacrifice, then I'll deal with you guys properly. Seeing Ming Shi and the rest suddenly appear, Yuri's didn't panic at all. He only glanced at Ming Shi and the rest indifferently and continued with his work. Obviously, in Yuri's heart, completing the sacrifice was more important than anything else. As Yuri's incantation became more and more complicated, the entire altar began to blow violently, as if something was about to descend. Little Bun stared curiously at the changes in his surroundings. There wasn't even a hint of fear in his big eyes. The faces of Ming Shi's team of 3 sank and they began attacking the altar furiously. Unfortunately, it was already too late. The altar had been activated. Ming Shi and the other 2 had ugly expressions on their faces. Was Little Bun really going to be sacrificed? Was such a cute child really going to leave them? Just as Ming Shi and the others were worried, the gale stopped. The thing that wanted to descend ran away. Yuri seemed to have suffered a backlash. He instantly aged 50 years, turning from a young man in his 30s to an old man in his 80s. Not only had Yuri's aged, but his essence, energy, and spirit had also withered significantly. He was like a real old man, his entire body emitting a thick aura of death. No, this is impossible. It can't fail. It took me so much effort to find a perfect offering. How can it fail? Yuri's, who had become an old man, shouted in disbelief. His voice was old and hoarse. His eyes were filled with panic and despair. It's precisely because it's too perfect that no one dared to accept this offering. Ming Shi calmly walked to the center of the altar and picked up the curious Little Bun. He didn't know if this little thing knew that he was almost sacrificed. If it weren't for his special background and extraordinary background, he would have been successfully sacrificed by this fellow. Ming Shi had no sympathy for such a pervert. He ended this pervert's life with a single stroke of his sword to prevent him from becoming even more perverted and harming other children. Little Bun was saved and Yuri's was dead. When Fengwu received the news, she immediately ran to meet up with Mingxi. Then, under the resentment of some people, the group left Sin City in one piece. It failed again. Fengyi, didn't you say that it would be foolproof? Why did it fail again? Hua Jin shouted. He couldn't believe that their well-planned plan had failed again. That Fengwu is a little unusual. It seems that we can't deal with her using normal methods. I'll think of another way, Fengyi said calmly. Fengyi originally thought that dealing with a young lady would be a piece of cake. He did not expect that Fengwu would come out of Sin City unscathed. Not only was she unharmed, she even saved the child. This time, they were on guard. It would be harder for them to take action in the future. However, it was more interesting this way. If they killed someone too easily, it would be meaningless, right? Fengwu and the rest returned to school safely with Little Bun. Teresa blamed herself and was sad that Little Bun had met with danger this time. In order to make up for it, she brought all kinds of exquisite baby food as an apology gift. Little Bun was a foodie like his mother. After receiving so many gifts, he immediately forgave Teresa. While Fengwu was overjoyed, Hua Jin had a bad feeling about it. Mingxi came to look for her today. Unfortunately, it was to warn her that if she dared to harm Fengwu again, he would also take action against her. Mingxi's heartlessness made Hua Jin feel hopeless. They grew up together. Were they not the most compatible? Why would Mingxi want a woman who had given birth to a child before instead of her? Why? How am I worse than Fengwu? Mingxi, of course, would not answer her question. Under Mingxi's threat, Hua Jin had no choice but to return to Silvermoon Ancient Kingdom. Mingxi said that if she did not leave, he would immediately use his power to make her unable to leave. She knew that Mingxi was telling the truth. He would not show mercy to his subordinates. Not at all. The heartbroken and desperate Hua Jin's hatred deepened, but she still decided to leave the school. She could not let Mingxi hate her even more. Although she insisted that she was not the one who kidnapped Fengwu and asked her to go to Sin City, Mingxi did not care what she said and insisted that she was the one who did it. If she did not leave, Mingxi might do something to her for Fengwu. She would not be able to stop Mingxi. After thinking it through, Hua Jin left. Although she had left, it did not mean that she had given up on dealing with Fengwu. She would continue. It might be more convenient for her to make her move if she left the school. Hua Jin's departure did not attract much attention in the school. This legendary Moon Empress was only here to experience life. Now that she had more or less experienced it, she naturally had to leave. She was someone who wanted to be the Moon Empress. She did not need to be like them, who had to attend classes every day to practice magic and battle energy to have a bright future. After Hua Jin left, the days continued to move forward. Unknowingly, Fengwu was promoted to the 3rd grade. During the first semester of her 3rd grade, the Heart of Earth was born. This time, Fengwu did not have anything to do. She obediently stayed at home to take care of the child and did not go anywhere. Later on, during the 4th grade, the Heart of Metal and the Heart of Fire were born respectively, but Fengwu still did not join in the fun. Irene and Zicheng, on the other hand, went every time. Xiaozhua also inevitably caused trouble every time. As a result, the female lead, Zicheng, finally had no fate with the Heart of 5 Elements. After resolving the crisis of the world's destruction, Xiaozhua only needed to protect his family wholeheartedly. Meanwhile, Irene and the female lead had started to become enemies. Irene had ruined the female lead's opportunities several times. It would be strange if the female lead did not hate her. Irene was now fighting with the female lead every day. Every now and then, they would tear into each other. In these 2 years, another major event happened. Eve's brother finally died to save Zicheng, just like in the original novel. Due to Irene, the female supporting character, changing the plot, Eve's brother's death was delayed for 2 years. Unfortunately, he still could not escape his original fate. In the end, he died gloriously to save Zicheng. Not long after Eve's brother died, Eve also died to save the female lead. It was said that the female lead cried for a few days when this happened, shedding a few crocodile tears. Chapter 601. In these 2 years, Eve's brother finally died to save Zicheng, just like in the original novel. Because of Irene, the female supporting character, changing the plot, Eve's brother's death was delayed by 2 years. Unfortunately, he still couldn't escape his original fate. In the end, in order to save Zicheng, he died gloriously. Not long after Eve's brother died, Eve also died to save the female lead. It was said that the female lead cried for several days when this happened, shedding a few crocodile tears. Fortunately, the plot was changed quite a bit. Other than Eve, many people who were supposed to be harmed by the female lead didn't do all kinds of stupid things for the female lead like in the original novel. As for Rika, in these 2 years, she had completely distanced herself from Zicheng and the others. Even Eve, who was originally on good terms with her, didn't contact her anymore. No one knew what she was thinking. Little Baozi was almost 4 years old. Every day, he would run around and play wildly. With Little White by his side, he didn't encounter any danger. Ever since Little Baozi almost couldn't come back 2 years ago, some familiar classmates would especially help Fenwu look after Little Baozi. Fenwu was naturally happy to see this happen. In these 2 years, the classmates around her had matured quite a bit. Only Fenwu hadn't matured at all. She was still that little expressionless lowly. Ming she had already graduated from Notre Dame du Starlight. In the 2nd year, Skycliffe and Elena also left school. Fenwu was promoted to the 4th grade, and most of Fenwu's classmates were still working hard in the 3rd grade. At Notre Dame du Starlight, it wasn't easy to get promoted. It was common for a grade to be stuck for 2 or 3 years. Fortunately, Fenwu's good friends, Ajur and Mo Gue, were promoted to the 4th grade like her. They didn't struggle in the 3rd grade. As the transmigrated female protagonist and the counterattacking female supporting character, Irene, of course, had also successfully advanced to the 4th grade. These two had powerful golden fingers, so it was impossible that they couldn't even advance to the 4th grade. In the past 2 years, the continent had been in turmoil. Many strange things had happened in many areas, and no one could figure out the reason for them. This had caused many people to be in a daze. More and more demonic creatures gushed into the human world, wreaking havoc there. In order to deal with the demonic creatures, the Astral Hall Master recruited a group of people from the Notre Dame du Starlight. Elena and the others all joined the Astral Hall to work. Last month, Hua Jin stole half of a map from the palace that no one knew the use of and even gave it to an outsider. This matter was discovered by the people of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. Hua Jin's reputation was instantly ruined, and she no longer had any chance of becoming the Moon Empress. Even the Moon Empress, who had always doted on her, was thoroughly disappointed in Hua Jin. Not long after the map went missing, someone found the entrance to the demon realm and wanted to enter the demon realm through this entrance. Unfortunately, this person did not know that it was not so easy to enter the demon realm. The moment the entrance was opened, there was a strong suction force that sucked away his life, blood, and strength. In short, this brave warrior who had delusions of entering the demon realm was eventually sucked away until only his skin was left. One had to admit that this person's identity was actually that perverted young man, Feng Yi. Feng Yi had made a deal with Hua Jin in the early years. Although the deal was not completed, he was determined to get the map. In order to get the map, he had threatened Hua Jin. Hua Jin did not want this matter to spread, so she had no choice but to reluctantly take the map. With this half of the map and the other half of the map in his hand, he could find the location of the treasure that was marked on the map. When Feng Yi found the location and opened the seal, he was immediately sucked to death by the door. Perhaps even Feng Yi did not expect that he would die in such a tragic manner. Feng Yi's death left behind a mess for the Moon Emperor. The door to the demon realm had been opened, and if it was not sealed, countless demonic creatures would flood into the human world. When that time came, it would definitely be a historical disaster for the human world. The map was lost in the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, so the Moon Emperor had no choice but to take responsibility. However, to seal the door to the demon realm was not an easy task. The difficulty was several times higher than sealing the enchantment in the Blood Moon Forest. When the Blood Moon Forest was sealed, it was only a forest. Sealing the door to the demon realm was not that simple. It was a door that could lead to another world. In order to seal the door to the demon realm, the Moon Emperor had used up too much of his demonic power. It would take 3 to 5 years for him to recover. The Moon Emperor's power was greatly reduced, and at this time, he passed the throne to the prince, Ming Shi, who had already grown up. Ming Shi became the Moon Emperor and became the youngest ruler of the 4 great empires. In the same year, the Sun Emperor announced his abdication. The new Moon Emperor was the nephew of the old Moon Emperor. He was the child of the old Moon Emperor's brother. This child inherited the strongest bloodline of the Sun Emperor's family. Only he could succeed the Moon Emperor and take on the responsibility of protecting the human world. When the Sun Emperor and the Moon Emperor announced their abdication, people wondered if the Lord of Heaven and the King of Earth would announce their abdication as well. Fortunately, that was not the case. The Lord of Heaven and the King of Earth of this generation were not young anymore. However, in these 2 empires, the successors of their bloodlines had just grown up. They still needed time to train. In a short period of time, the Lord of Heaven and the King of Earth would not give the throne to them. The Sun Emperor and the Moon Emperor of this generation were young men. They were young and promising. Who knew how many famous young ladies had their eyes on them? Unfortunately, one of them said that he did not want to get married, and the other said that he already had a fiancée. Although the 2 emperors had expressed their intentions, the girls were too passionate. They did not care what they said and still insisted that they wanted to have children with the 2 emperors. In order not to disturb Fengwu's peaceful school life, no one knew that the Fengwu girl was the fiancée that the Moon Emperor mentioned. Fengwu lived very comfortably in the school, and no one came to disturb her. In addition, when Fengwu was in the 4th grade, someone from the Star Hall came looking for her, hoping that she could work there. It was probably to do paperwork. It was obvious that Feng Juntian had used his connections to help her get this job. Most of the jobs at the Star Hall involved fighting demons. There were only a few jobs that did not require too much danger. For the sake of her elder brother, the Fengwu girl agreed to do paperwork. At the same time, Ajur and Mo Gui also joined the Star Hall. Ajur was originally the Star Hall's holy envoy, while Mo Gui was recommended to join the Star Hall because of his good performance in school. The homework of the 4th grade was not too heavy, and the 3 young people all began to practice in Star Hall. This time, the little bun insisted on going with them. No matter how Fengwu tried to persuade him, he would not listen. Fengwu had to take him to Star Hall to register. Ajur and Mo Gui were both assigned to the combat department. Fengwu went to the office by herself. Along with her was Steamed Bun Knight, who was unwilling to leave Fengwu no matter what. Working at the Star Hall was an extremely rare opportunity. There was no other person who dared to bring their child along like Fengwu. Fengwu didn't know any of that. She kept a straight face and went to the office area where the clerks worked. Most of the people who worked here were not very strong, or it could be said that they were trash. When they entered the office area, they saw a few men and women writing on the table. Here, a young man wearing glasses noticed them and walked over with a friendly smile. "You're Fengwu, right? Welcome to the paperwork office. Today, there are 2 other newcomers besides you. You can sit here and wait for a while. Once everyone is here, I'll arrange work for you." The handsome young man wearing glasses smiled very amiably. Fengwu nodded indifferently. The man was not dissatisfied with Fengwu's coldness. His smile was still sincere. However, when he saw a certain little steamed bun, his smile became a bit distorted. This child is... The young man wearing glasses pointed at Xiao Yi with uncertainty. He began to wonder if he had been working too late last night and was hallucinating. This is my son, Feng Yi. Fengwu introduced him. Your son? No. I mean, why is he here? This was the first time the young man wearing glasses had seen someone bring their child to work. He felt a bit uncomfortable. He doesn't want to be alone. He wants to follow me. Fengwu girl said with a bit of grievance. Xiao Yi didn't want to play by himself and kept pestering her to work with him. Fengwu girl had no choice but to agree. She felt that her son was getting harder to communicate with as he grew older. Could it be that he had reached the legendary rebellious stage? The young man wearing glasses didn't know what to say. Would someone bring their child to work on the first day of work? Was there anyone? Could you find a second one? No, even if it's not the first day of work, you can't bring your child to work. This is a serious inconsistency between public and private affairs. You should be severely criticized. Just as he was about to tell Fengwu that she couldn't bring her child to work, a girl suddenly rushed in from the door. This girl was wearing the work uniform of the Star Hall's document processing room. Her hair was tied up in a high ponytail. Her face was young and cute, especially her pair of big eyes were particularly bright. I'm sorry. It's my first time coming to such a high-end place like the Star Hall. I accidentally looked at the scenery for too long. Boss, please forgive me. I didn't mean it. If my brother knew that I was fired on the first day of work, my brother would definitely kill me. Boss, you won't be so unreasonable, right? The young man wearing glasses didn't say anything, but this girl began to bombard him. After she finished speaking, she winked at the young man, making the corner of the young man wearing glasses twitch. You're Han Xia. The young man wearing glasses had no choice but to associate a girl in the file with this reckless girl. In the file, the reason why this girl was recruited was that her writing was outstanding and she was full of love for literature. She was a good girl who was hard to come by. He didn't know whether her writing was outstanding, whether she was full of love for literature, or whether she was a good girl who was motivated. He only knew that this girl seemed to be a little silly. Then he thought about the reason why Fengwu was recruited. There were only 4 words: conscientiousness and responsibility. Wasn't it obvious that she came in through the door? Couldn't you write a few more words to make the file look better? With only 4 words on it, he was embarrassed to show this file to others. Chapter 602. He didn't know if she was an outstanding writer, or if she was passionate about literature, or if she was a good girl. He only knew that this girl was a little silly. Thinking about Fengwu's reason for being hired, it was only 4 words: conscientiousness and responsibility. Wasn't it obvious that she was hired through the door? Couldn't she write a few more words to make the file look better? With just 4 words, he was too embarrassed to show the file to others. He hoped that the last one wouldn't be such a weirdo. Although the document processing room only did some clerical work, the pay was good, and they didn't need to go to the front lines to fight monsters. It could be said that it was an extremely safe job, but this didn't mean that their department would accept just anyone. Yes, boss, you actually know me. I'm Han Xia, my brother is Han Jiang, the clerk of the arbitration tribunal. My brother introduced me to this job. My hobbies are writing, painting, and singing. If you guys are tired from work, you can call me to sing a song to relieve everyone's fatigue. I can do it. Han Xia was like a little chatterbox, a long string of words coming out of her mouth. Very good, this girl was not only silly, but also a chatterbox. Han Zhang's sister was the polar opposite of her gentle and polite brother. He originally thought that Han Zhang's sister was the same as him, the kind of liberal arts elite that made people feel at ease. He didn't expect her to be a chatterbox. If he had known, he wouldn't have agreed to let Han Zhang's sister into the document processing room no matter how much he said. Enough, I know who you are. You and Fengwu rest for a while. There's still one more person who hasn't arrived. We'll wait for a while. Just as he finished speaking, another person walked in. This time, it wasn't a girl, but a boy. This boy looked very bright and definitely didn't look older than 20 years old. He was a little handsome and was definitely a little fresh meat. Sorry, because it wasn't easy to get a job at Star Hall, I was so excited that I couldn't sleep last night. As a result, I overslept when the sun rose. Boss, I was wrong. I won't be late next time. Please don't fire me. The sunny little fresh meat pleaded with the bespectacled youth with a pitiful look. You're Zhao Yang. The bespectacled youth said the sunny little fresh meat's name with certainty. Even his name was Zhao Yang. He was indeed a sunny boy. Yes, I am Zhao Yang. Zhao Yang stood upright and admitted his mistake with a good attitude. After seeing the expressionless young girl with a baby and the silly and talkative young girl, the young man named Zhao Yang was more pleasing to the eyes of the young man with glasses. He didn't even fuss over the fact that he was late on his first day of work. Even the young man himself did not realize that his standards had been lowered again and again. Alright, you don't have to say anymore. Just be careful not to be late next time. It's understandable that everyone might not be used to working on their first day. After that, the bespectacled young man paused for a moment before continuing. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Wu Chang. During your one-year internship, I'll be in charge of leading you and arranging your daily work. I'll also be in charge of assessing your abilities a year later. After a year, if your ability evaluation reaches good or above, you can stay. If not, you can no longer work in the Star Hall. I believe someone already told you this when you took the Star Hall exam, so I won't talk about some of the content in the middle. Now, I will arrange your work. I have 3 blank files in my hand. These files have already marked the place where you will complete the records. Now, the 3 of you can come over and take one. Wu Chang took out 3 files that had not been recorded and let the 3 newcomers come up and take one. Han Xia was the most enthusiastic. He was the first to rush up and take one. Fengwu was the second. As the only man among the 3, Zhao Yang naturally fell to the last. The last file folder was his. There were 3 locations in the 3 files. What they had to do was to go to the location marked on the file folder and make the next record. The 3 of them received the task and did not dare to stay any longer. They immediately set off to the place they were going to. Fengwu took Kid to the scene of the Red Group's second team's operation. Her task was to record the process of the Red Group's second team's capture of the Star Hall wanted criminal. This time, they caught a woman who committed all kinds of evil. This woman was an evil sorcerer who specialized in absorbing men's essence and blood to improve her magic. After the men's essence and blood were sucked dry by her, they all rapidly aged and died miserably. This woman was nicknamed the Black Widow. She was in the top 10 of the Star Hall's red list. Star Hall had 7 groups of warriors: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. Red was the lowest level and purple was the highest. These 7 groups of warriors were each divided into 10 small teams. There was no limit to the number of people in each team. However, the higher the team, the fewer humans there were because the requirements were higher. Because it was Fengwu's first time doing paperwork, Wu Chang arranged some relatively simple and non-dangerous work for them. Fengwu found the Red Group's second team. The people in the second team knew that she was the new scribe and did not make things difficult for her. They took Fengwu with them to catch the Black Widow. In order to protect Fengwu's safety, the captain of the second team also sent 2 good warriors to protect her and Xiao Ye's safety. In order to prevent the child from running around, one of the warriors simply carried Xiao Yi the whole time. They were afraid that when he ran around, he would run into the Black Widow's encirclement. At that time, if there was an accident, their second team would be in trouble. This time, the task of catching the Black Widow went very smoothly. Fengwu held a pen and watched from the back. She only wrote a few words when the task was finished. Then, she put the file away and left. The 2 warriors in the second team saw Fengwu writing. When could paperwork be so simple and clear? I'm not well educated. Don't lie to me. Zhaoyang and Han Xia happened to come back as well when Fengwu returned to the document processing room with the file she had prepared. The 3 met and went to Wu Chang to hand in the task. Wu Chang calmly opened Fengwu's file and flipped it open. There were only a few words written on it. Under the joint efforts of the Red Group's second team, the Black Widow was caught. It's over, there's nothing. Unwilling to give up, he flipped to the back. Sure enough, there was not a single word. Wu Chang's face darkened. Fengwu, what the hell are you writing? Even if you're lazy, you can't do this. I'm not lazy. Fengwu looked at Wu Chang with a wronged expression. Wu Chang instantly felt that he was a pervert who bullied a girl. Alright, she's a newcomer and has no experience. Don't get angry. It will get better in the future. This is too simple. This won't do. Next time, you have to write the process in more detail. Wu Chang coughed lightly, his tone much better. Fengwu didn't quite understand, but she still nodded obediently. It's okay, Fengwu. It's your first time after all. If you don't understand, you can refer to what I wrote. I'm not boasting, but I'm a professional. Han Xia stood at the side and said with a smile. That smile was full of confidence. Since she was so confident, then let's take a look at her. Then, Wu Chang put Fengwu's file aside and picked up Han Xia's file. Wu Chang spent a minute reading it and his whole face turned green. You, tell me what you wrote. If it was said that when he saw Fengwu's file, he only felt a little powerless and angry, then when he saw Han Xia's file, Wu Chang felt like he was about to vomit blood. The members of the Red Third Team surrounded Bing Ji. Bing Ji was at a loss as she looked at the members of the Red Third Team surrounding her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with struggle and grievance. The handsome captain looked at Bing Ji's eyes with a trace of unbearable pain. The next second, he resisted the heartache and slashed at Bing Ji with his long sword. Bing Ji dodged sideways, the expression on her face seemed to be hidden and resentful. Captain Red Group couldn't bear it and closed his eyes, but he still didn't forget his responsibility. He was a warrior of the Star Temple. All the monsters must be eliminated. After a painful struggle, Captain Chi San and his brothers finally caught Bing Ji. The moment Bing Ji was caught, the 2 of them looked at each other for 10,000 years. When they heard the contents of the file, all the people who heard it were shocked. Some people even dropped the food in their hands to the ground. Is there a problem with that? I think I wrote it well. You see, if there's a fighting scene, there's a fighting scene, there's a literary scene, there's a literary scene. This is my work of confidence. Han Xia couldn't figure out what the problem was. How can you tell from Bing Ji's eyes that there are so many emotions? Bing Ji is an ice-type demon. Her eyes are as white as ice. Furthermore, Bing Ji has no emotions. She is cold from head to toe. Grievance, confusion, and bewilderment. Are you sure you wrote Bing Ji, not the female lead of a novel? And Captain Red Group, when did he look at Bing Ji for 10,000 years? Why don't you go to heaven? Take it back and rewrite it. If you don't write it well, keep writing it until you write it well. Wu Chang was about to vomit blood. What kind of person was this? He wrote a flat file into a novel. Han Jiang, this fraud, said that his sister's writing was good and she was full of love for literature. He felt strange. His sister was so excellent. Why didn't the arbitral tribunal accept her? Instead, they begged him. It turned out that the direction of her excellence was in the novel. Wu Chang was so angry that he smashed the file on Han Xia's face. No matter how stupid Han Xia was, he knew that he had hit the muzzle of a gun. He didn't dare to fart and closed his small mouth tightly. Yes, boss. Han Xia felt wronged. It was obviously a self-confident work. Next to them, a person who had worked in the document processing room for some years suddenly called Han Xia. I say, little sister Han Xia, what did you do before you came here? The big sister said with a smile. Me? I used to write novels. Those noble ladies liked to read novels when they had nothing to do. I loved to write that since I was a child. Han Xia had a proud expression on his face. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.